It is September 13th at 1:30. We'll call this meeting of the CRTPA Board to order. Let's start with roll call.
Yolanda's making her way.
Just one second. Commissioner Matlow,
Here.
Commissioner Dozier, Commissioner Maddox,
Here.
Commissioner Minor,
Here.
Commissioner Richardson, Commissioner Williams-Cox,
Here.
Commissioner Merritt,
Here.
Commissioner Barfield,
Right here.
and get everybody, Commissioner Minor. Okay, I think that's everyone.
Great, and I believe Commissioner Dozier will be joining us
Yes.
digitally.
Actually,
There she is.
Oh, there we go.
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Hey, and you can hear us fine?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Let's move on to any agenda modifications?
No, sir, not today.
Do we have any public comments on items not appearing on the agenda?
We did not have anyone sign up. We have several signed up for item 6C, but not for unagended items.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda.
Move consent.
Second.
We have a motion to approve consent with a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Consent carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I apologize. This is Commissioner Dozier. Am I authorized to take votes, or do we need to have a vote of the board to authorize my virtual participation?
Mr. Attorney?
We have to do that on some of the other boards, so I just wanted to double check before I voted.
I'm gonna have to look at that issue, but I think she's okay. I'll look at the bylaws before the votes come up.
You need a motion?
I was gonna say, if you need a motion, we'll go ahead and do that.
Let's go ahead and take a motion and approve it just in case.
Move
Okay.
that she be able, Commissioner Dozier be able to vote?
Second.
All those in favor of allowing Commissioner Dozier to participate digitally?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair,
Motion
and
carries
everyone else. Abundance of caution is appreciated.
We think we may have missed someone who wanted to speak under the unagenda items. I apologize. Terry Ryan, I believe. I'm reading that correctly?
Okay. Oh, apologies. We have two speaker forms for unagended items, so we'll take those now. First will be Dave Jacobson, followed by Terry Ryan. And you may approach the microphone there and have 3 minutes.
Hello, Mr. Chairman. I'm David Jacobson. I'm president of the Stonegate Homeowners Association off of Centerville Road. And I'm here to speak about the noise abatement barriers from Olson Road to Centerville Road. The Florida Department of Transportation will be installing these barriers at a future time. And we are asking the CRTPA to initiate some dialogue with Florida DOT to have that work started now, not on their agenda. We are asking that the noise abatement barriers be 14 feet in height, that they continue from Olson Road all the way to Centerville Road. And I represent my neighborhood, but also 734 residents in that neighborhood. And we sent to the CRTPA chair our comments on that. So we would ask you to favorably investigate this and to take whatever steps you can on our behalf to have the noise abatement barriers installed immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Jacobson, would you give your address for the record?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's David Jacobson, 3019 Windy Hill Lane, Tallahassee, 32308. And unfortunately, I live in the county, and my county representative is Brian Welch, but we live in the county.
Thank you. And we'll follow up on those concerns with you. Next speaker is Mr. Terry Ryan, 3 minutes, and state your name and address for the record.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Terry Ryan. I live at 2538 Stonegate Drive, Tallahassee, 32308. As Mr. Jacobson indicated, he is the president of the Stonegate subdivision. I am the co-founder of the Residents of Centerville Road Group, which is composed of approximately 10 subdivisions along Centerville Road from Olson Road to Interstate 10, and represents about 500 to 600 homes in that area. Several years ago, when the City of Tallahassee was putting in a massive electrical line along Interstate 10, they destroyed thousands of trees along Interstate 10, which backed up to a lot of these subdivisions. And as a result, a wooden barrier was put up. It didn't last very long. It's now deteriorating. And the result of that is that we've had an increase in the amount of noise that the residents are hearing along Interstate 10. It's not unusual for vagrants to come up from Interstate 10 going into subdivisions and walking around the subdivisions and everything. It's not unusual when an accident happens that residents in these subdivisions can hear the screams and yells of people, especially children involved in accidents. As Mr. Jacobson indicated, we understand the FDOT is planning to put up some type of barrier wall. They've already made certain studies and everything indicating they are definitely needed. And the only problem is the Interstate 10 is being widened, and it's going to take several years to do that. We really need relief right now to take care of the problems that we're hearing, the noises, and many other things I just mentioned. So that's why we're here, hoping the regional authority here can see fit to create a project along this or give us advice on what we can do. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. We are on 6, CRTP Action A, CRTPA Federal Certification.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We recently completed our triennial certification with the Federal Highway Administration, and I'd like to introduce Kathy Kendall from Federal Highway, and she's going to review with you the results of the certification.
Thank you,
There's
Commissioners.
no action needed on this item.
Thank you for allowing me to be on your agenda today. I want to go over the certification process we've had for the past year. Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration are required to federally certify the transportation management agencies at least every 4 years. And so this last year, we did our certification review of the CRTPA. And so in February, we had a site visit. Next slide, please. We had a virtual site visit back in February where we met with staff from the CRTPA, the transit agencies, and had a public meeting to receive input. We had about 4 people from Federal Highway, someone from FTA attend, and as part of this review, we found 4 noteworthy practices, 2 corrective actions, and 2 recommendations. We issued the certification report in June, and go ahead and next slide, please. So a noteworthy practice is something that we do want to point out that the CRTPA is doing that other MPOs may want to also replicate. A corrective action is something that's related to a law or regulation. And then a recommendation is something that we note to possibly improve the planning process. So for our certification review, we do it on a risk-based approach. And the topic areas we focused on for this certification included the Unified Planning Work Program, the Long-Range Transportation Plan, a financial plan and fiscal constraint, the Transportation Performance Management, TPM as it's called, and then transit. Next slide, please. So the four noteworthy practices, they included in the transportation planning factors, the innovative approach that the CRTPA uses to address things like congestion and safety and economic development. And I think the Midtown Corridor Study was an example of one of these. Transit was another noteworthy practice, specifically the Move It transit fare technology that connects users to the first mile, last mile approach using micro transportation applications. And then transit pairing up with the universities to use grants to improve the routes and virtual public involvement techniques to improve the ridership. It was one of the few areas where transit ridership had improved that FTA noted. And also the outreach and participation, the CRTPA's use of the traffic jam flyers to inform the public about the LRTP development. Next slide, please. So the two corrective actions we did note for the CRTPA, the first is the long-range transportation plan, financial plan, fiscal constraint. So we noted a number of things with that, including that the first 5 years of projects were not included in the long-range transportation plan, as well as comparing the revenues and the costs for the projects for the entire time frame for all projects, including the non-state roads and transit. So we worked with the CRTPA staff, and they agreed to develop an action plan that they put in place back in July, and they have begun to implement many of these things at this time. The second corrective action is related to the TIP, and this is the projects. Again, it relates back to the first 5 years of the long-range transportation plan. The projects in the TIP would then not be consistent because those projects are not in the long-range transportation plan. So those are two areas we've been working with the MPO to address. And next we have the recommendations. And the first is involving the UPWP, including updating new versions of the internal controls and guidelines and the administrative procedures manual. This was something that was on the certification review 4 years ago as a recommendation. I think it's just one area that may have slipped through, so we continued that as a recommendation again. And then the last one being the outreach and public participation, that we recommend that to go ahead and include an update on your public involvement participation procedures so that it's clear that what the range of the time the public has to comment on a TIP or LRTP amendment. So I think that is all of the recommendations. And if you have any questions regarding this process, I've got my contact information as well as someone else on our staff, and FTA also will take any questions as well.
Thank you. This is not an action item, but if there's any comments or questions from the board? Commissioner Richardson?
Yeah, I'm just curious to know how it was that, Greg, these things got left out of our plan. And I think she said there was one that was suggested previously and is being suggested again because it wasn't?
You mean in terms of the long-range transportation
Yes.
plan? They were actually in the plan, they just weren't in the section of the plan
okay.
preferred by Federal Highway. And that's part of what we're doing is revising. If you recall, when y'all adopted the plan, there was a cost feasible table that was included in that. We had included the TIP projects, I think a page or two before that.
Okay.
So we'll be revising that table to make sure all the projects are on a single page.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Welcome. Any other questions?
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 6B, CRTPA fiscal 2020 financial statements.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair?
Sorry, Commissioner Dozier.
I'm sorry, I should have asked if anyone was looking at the hand raised on the virtual. So if you'd prefer me to do this a different way, just let me know.
Commissioner Dozier. Yeah, they go back and forth between the presentations, so just speak up and we'll get to you.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you. So Commissioner Richardson, I had a similar question that you had. So thank you for that response, Greg. And it seems like we've made a substantial amount of progress since the last certification. And so that was kind of my first question. I mean, reflecting, you have a few recommendations here. I assume that might not be unusual when you do the certifications. And so those are the two questions. Have we made a lot of progress in the last 4 to 8 years? And is this unusual to see recommendations?
Commissioner, I'll let Kathy answer that question.
Thank you. It's not unusual to see recommendations for a certification review. Of more concern would be the corrective actions, since those are things that are related to fulfilling a law or regulation. So those were the things that were more concerning. Not all certifications have a corrective action, but many do. And the CRTPA has been working to address those. So we're very happy that they're working on that, and we're pleased with the progress being made in that area. As far as progress since the last certification review, we did go through all of the items that were noted in the report 4 years ago, and the majority of those had been addressed. There were just portions of those previous recommendations that I mentioned here that had not been. And I think the CRTPA, in fact, has been in the process of fixing those. So we just included it as a recommendation to continue to do so that those will be fulfilled.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy, very much. That I wanted to get a sense of the recommendations and corrective actions, so thank you for that. And the other part, Mr. Chair, was just the noteworthy practices. I was really pleased to see the public participation and coordination with these studies that we're doing with Blueprint City and County. I mean, that was pretty significant, and I know we've worked a lot on that over the years. So that's it. Thank you very much, and thank you for the report.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Moving on to the 2020 financial statements.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we recently completed our fiscal year 20 financial audit. As I always like to say, everything was where it's supposed to be. All the money was accounted for, and we submitted it on time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Wayne Durrett from our auditing firm. And Wayne, go ahead.
Thank you. As you said, my name is Wayne Durrett. I'm with James Moore & Company CPAs, and I'm the audit manager on this engagement. Here with me today is Andrew Ferguson. He's the senior accountant on the audit engagement. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to be your auditors, and big thanks to management and all the CRTPA staff, as well as the City of Tallahassee staff that were involved in the audit process. As you guys can imagine, there's a lot of work that goes into this financial statement audit, and everybody was a pleasure to work with as usual. So starting off first with some required communications. Our responsibility as it relates to the financial statement audit, it's our responsibility to issue our opinion on the financial statements and issue our required reports. And it's management's responsibility. Management is responsible for the preparation and the fair presentation of the financial statements. So some significant accounting estimates. The most significant accounting estimate that is included in your financial statements is what we call the net pension liability. This liability number was determined by the City of Tallahassee's actuary, who actually determined this number, and that is why it is considered an estimate. Corrected, significant, and/or uncorrected audit adjustments. There were no significant or uncorrected audit adjustments. If we did have any of those, we would be required to disclose those to you here today. We had no significant difficulties in performing the audit. If we did have any significant difficulties or disagreements with management, anything like that, we would be required to disclose that to you. However, there were none. So now jumping into the actual results of the audit reports themselves. The first report we do have, we have a total of 5 reports. in total. The first report is the report on the financial statements. Really, this is the report on the numbers themselves. We have issued what's called an unmodified opinion. Essentially, what this means is that the numbers presented in your financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, and anyone who uses these financial statements knows that they can rely on those numbers. The second report we have is our report on internal control and compliance. So while the primary objective of our audit is to issue an opinion on the financial statements themselves, is if we do note any material weaknesses as it relates to internal controls or any material non-compliance with laws, regulations, things of that matter, we would be required to disclose those. We had no additional items to disclose as it relates to internal control material weaknesses, so that is a clean report. The next report we have is our report on compliance for major federal programs. So since the CRTPA did expand over the threshold and federal grant awards were required to go in and do a mini compliance audit over those significant compliance requirements in accordance with the grant agreement. We have issued an unmodified opinion on that report as well, so this is a clean report. The next report we have is our independent accountant's examination report. So as part of our audit, we are required to issue an opinion as to whether or not the CRTPA was in compliance with Florida statutes as it relates to investments, policies, and procedures. We did note that the CRTPA is in compliance with those statutes, so this is a clean report as well. The last report we have issued is the management letter required by the State of Florida Auditor General. This report is a little bit more of a catch-all, and if we add any additional recommendations as it relates to financial management, things like that, we would be required to include those there. We did have no additional modifications or recommendations, anything like that to include, so once again, a clean report there. So last up, just a couple quick financial highlights. Total grant revenues expended, just over $1.5 million for the year. Total remaining fund balance, which is the difference between your assets and liabilities, really what's left over at the end of the year, just over $200,000 in total. On the governmental activity side, which is your full accrual financial statements, including all your long-term assets and liabilities, it does report an unrestricted deficit of about $200,000. However, most of this is related to that net pension liability, which we discussed just previously. However, I just want to point out, really, that liability is more of an exercise in accounting standards rather than a tangible liability that the CRTPA would need to fund in the immediate future. So just like to always point that out. That's all I had. I'll go ahead and open it up to questions.
Motion to accept the 2020 financial statements.
Second.
I always appreciate a good audit. Very exciting.
Thank you, sir. And can we get the WebEx back on the screen? We have a motion to accept the audit. With a second, any discussion? Commissioner
Mr.
Richardson.
Chairman, just very briefly, I wanted to congratulate Greg and his staff. This is not atypical of our CRTPA audits. They have had good audits in the past, and that suggests that we are being good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. And so I just wanted to recognize that and be on record as congratulating Greg and his staff for doing a fine job in that respect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other comments on this item? Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the table?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're moving on to the Thomas Hill Road Multi-Use Path Feasibility Study. We have about 20 public speakers on this item. I just want to preface the conversation. This isn't an action item for us today, but it is a great opportunity for the public to weigh in on their viewpoints of the different routes opposed, as well as get an update from our staff of the work that has gone into it. So we'll have a presentation by staff, followed by public comment, and then if there's board discussion to follow, that'll be the appropriate time, but no action today is required. Mr. Slay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we normally do with projects like this, before we go out and start, in this case, our second phase of public involvement, we like to bring it to you all and give you an update and show you actually what we will be presenting in the various public meetings. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jack Castrew, our project manager, and let him take it away.
Thank you all very much. We have a presentation, a brief presentation by Kimley Horn & Associates, who is our consultant for this project. But I'll briefly tell you where we're at in terms of the schedule and everything. We have gone through the last 2 years almost, the project began in 2019, take a look at the opportunity to put a trail along Thomasville Road, and we've expanded that north and southwise with several different options that we've got. And those will be in the presentation. We've gone out and we've collected existing data, a wide range of information from tree information to infrastructure, utilities, schools, parks, et cetera. All of that information is in the existing conditions report, which can be found on the website. And there's a link in your agenda item if you want to go back and look at that as well. And so we are in the kind of the midway point with public engagement. That all started back in January and November, actually, when we first sent out notifications to the public about that opportunity to talk with us about the project. We have gone out and we've met with homeowners associations, individuals, groups, et cetera, to get input on the project where we're at so far. We have the second part of this public engagement that'll be starting within a couple weeks, and it'll go through about mid-November. And then at that point, we'll be coming back to you in January, hopefully, with a recommendation on the project. Again, these are all kind of premised on the fact that we're still dealing with COVID-19, and that may affect how we go out and have our public engagement. For the first phase, it has been, for the most part, virtual realm, so we've been really kind of pushed with the technology that we've got and presented something I thought was pretty meaningful in terms of how we engage the community with our project. So with that, I will turn it over to Kate Widnes from Kimley Horn, and she'll give you some information and a brief presentation on the project, and then we'll be able to take your questions and public comment. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jack. Can everyone hear me okay? Yep. Awesome. All right, Jack gave a good introduction, so I just wanted to talk a little bit about a project background, because as we went out to the public, a question we kept hearing was, where did this project originate from? So the Greenways Master Plan was a master plan looking at a trail network throughout Tallahassee and Leon County. That was adopted back in 2004, so we're coming up on 20 years. That master plan had several updates completed to it. The 2013 update of that Greenways Master Plan included Thomasville Road needing multimodal improvements, and in that master plan version, the 2013, they actually had a list of criteria. They ranked all of the 29 projects, and Thomasville Road came out to be the 4th project that they felt needed to be prioritized. That same year in 2013, the city and the commission both adopted that 2013 Greenways Master Plan. Master Plan was then updated again in 2015. This did not include a prioritized list of projects, but it still continued to include Thomasville Road identified as a need within the trail network within our community. So then in 2017, the Blueprint IA adopted funding or approved funding for the 2015 Greenways Master Plan and allocated funding each year to implement the Greenways Master Plan as well as the bike route system. And Thomasville Road was a prioritized project for the Blueprint IA. Thomasville Road then was initiated and a part of the Tallahassee-Leon County Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan 2019 update. And in that project, all projects were put into 3 different tiering groups based on how they satisfied criteria, and Thomasville Road fell into the top tier of projects. And then, like Jack said, in about 2020, just about January, kicked off the feasibility study for this project. Thomasville Road has also been included in the long-range transportation plan for the past few years during those updates. So just want to talk a little bit about the local trails network here in Tallahassee-Leon County and how Thomasville Road fits into this. So starting on the north part of this map, you have Bannerman Road. That is a roadway project that has multimodal improvements included in that, and that is moving towards design. Another project is the Meridian Road that connects to Bannerman and is actually moving towards feasibility that would connect to Bannerman Road. And that's similar to this, to see if there's even a possibility of putting some type of sidewalk or multi-use path or wide sidewalk along that corridor. So that's moving forward as well. Then moving south, you have McClay Road. Along McClay Road, from where it meets into Meridian over to McClay Boulevard, it's kind of split down in the middle. The county's looking at a sidewalk on the western half, and Blueprint is looking into feasibility for a sidewalk or a trail on the eastern part of that, which then connects to McClay Boulevard, which is all a part of the Market District placemaking project. South of the project area we're looking at now is Thomasville Road, which was a part of the Midtown Area Transportation Plan. So that goes from Monroe Street up to Benton, where this project begins. That master plan, the Midtown Area Transportation Plan, was adopted back in 2020, was the year moving forward. DOT is moving forward with the heart of the Midtown Southern section of that project moving into design shortly, and that's going to be from Monroe to 7th Avenue. The section from 7th Avenue to Benton still is not moving forward yet. And then the dark lines on the map really show a lot of the things that we have existing. Franklin, Cascades Trail, FAMU Way, all the way down to St. Mark's Trail. And this project in Thomasville Road really connects all these things of the multimodal network that we're building throughout our community, and is kind of considered the north-south connector within Tallahassee and Leon County. So like Jack said, we've done an existing conditions analysis. There is a lot of data that has been collected. This is a feasibility study, so what I continuously tell people is what we're doing in feasibility is we're flying about 10,000 feet over the corridor. We're looking at data as well as we can from that level to understand what is existing out there, what's the possibility, can it even occur out there, and then getting some public engagement related to that. So in addition to all of this data that we collected for this project, the project team went out there and we conducted multiple site visits. We walked the corridor up and down multiple times. We rode our bikes up and down. We went on the alternatives multiple times. So we really went out there to try to understand what possibly could happen. And even brought some engineering technical staff out there to understand utilities, what could be done, how do we accommodate that without having to maybe underground things? Is it possible to move it to allow for additional space out there? So like Jack said, a lot of this information is in the existing conditions report. We even had site visits with DOT too towards the end of our data collection just to let them know where we were within this process. So initial public engagement. After the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan 2019 update, there was a Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan Working Group, which was made up of local technical staff. That group was consulted multiple times during the data collection phase to understand existing projects that could potentially affect or coordinate with this project as we move forward, as well as some additional data for consideration in the assessment. And we're still continuing to work with technical staff and collect data and understand other projects that are going on. Stakeholders were also identified during the data collection, and some were consulted during that time in the process. This included representatives from the schools along the corridor, partnering agencies such as Parks and Recreation, real estate to understand some of the easements that we were considering, as well as some business owners within the area. Then in early 2021 is when we began really the public outreach, and we started to work with the neighborhood associations. So we would either attend already scheduled neighborhood associations, or we would have project-specific meetings based on their request. We would either give a presentation, and then there was ample time for question and answer. So I feel like we've had really good dialogue during those neighborhood associations, which will continue into this next round of public engagement. The first round of public engagement was conducted entirely virtual due to the ongoing pandemic. So what we did was we created a virtual hosting room, which included information related to the background of the project, maps, timelines. What we had collected was available for the public to look at, and that room was open for approximately a month. We had 3 live question and answer sessions that were kind of complementary to that virtual room, and we had the project team available to answer any questions, take comment, provide information. So the virtual room and the live Q&As were advertised through email contacts provided by Neighborhood Association, as well as a postcard was mailed out along the corridor once we heard from the public that they felt like maybe they hadn't heard about the project enough. So that being said, this is just a little bit of a summary. It was really encouraging to see that we had over 200 individuals attend the virtual meeting room. We haven't seen numbers like that at a public meeting for a CRTPA project in a really long time. So that was encouraging to see how many people were coming there to gather information. The last question and answer session, we had more participants, I think because of the mail out, and that's something that we're gonna do even further along the corridor for this next round of engagement, just to make sure everyone's aware of how they can come and participate. So the timestamp of some of the summary information at the bottom is August 31st. We have received a lot more comment on this project since August 31st, but there's been opposition and support for the project, as well as a lot of people just asking more questions and asking the CRTPA to come out and possibly answer the questions that they have or provide a little bit more information. So with that, we're going to move into the alternatives analysis. And the way we are going to walk through this is we've divided it into 4 segments. We're going to start on the southern terminus of the project, which is Benton Road to Armistead Road, which we're calling segment 1. As we began the feasibility study, we initially started our evaluation looking at the existing conditions along Thomasville Road, just looking at Thomasville Road East and Thomasville Road West. Thomasville Road on the east side has sufficient right-of-way with a few areas where trees or some existing structures are present, and there may have to be created design to accommodate a trail. There are also several business entrances and exits as well as residential neighborhoods along this area. The Circle K gas station, which is quite an entrance along this area, that would need to be addressed for the trail. The west side of the corridor has varying right-of-way, though, and would really be difficult to accommodate a 10-foot path with a buffer between the corridor and the trail on the west side of the road, just due to right-of-way limitations in this area. So as technical engagement continued and field visits occurred, we had a few other alternatives pop up for this segment. These additional alternatives were evaluated, including the construction of a multi-use path on top of the McCord Trescott drainage ditch. That's a project being completed by the city, and that would be utilizing that drainage ditch and then the existing berm, which is currently unpaved and really frequently used by a lot of runners, walkers, and cyclists out there. And that would connect to the existing trail within McCord Park and then to Armistead Road up to Thomasville Road. After we had coordination with the city on the drainage ditch, we got a little bit of right-of-way information available along Trescott Drive, which allowed for us to evaluate that corridor as a possibility. We really looked on the eastern side of Trescott Drive, where the sidewalk currently isn't, because there was right-of-way there, as well as some utility lines, so there weren't trees on that side of the road. As we continued some engagement and also just evaluated some more of the options moving forward, Trescott Drive and Thomasville Road really fell off for this one as being feasible. Trescott Drive, with just the amount of residential driveways there, as well as just it being in a residential neighborhood road and coordinating with the people who live directly there, as well as Thomasville Road West, just with the restricted right-of-way within that area and possibly not allowing for a buffer between the trail and the road within that area. So in this option, we have 2 feasible alternatives, which we're going to move forward and kind of get a little bit more feedback from the public in this second round of engagement. That's going to be Thomasville Road East and the Trescott Ditch, which then connects to McCord Park within this area. So because the space is limited within the Thomasville Road and right-of-way really varies throughout this project, we looked at other ways to get additional space to accommodate a trail and a buffer. For segment 1, there is an existing slip lane which merges after about the SunTrust bank that's there with some gore area following. There's possibility to remove some of that space to allow for additional room for a trail and a buffer for this path, as well as narrowing down and making the lane widths consistent along Thomasville Road in this area. Right now, they're approximately 12 feet, though they do vary in bringing it down to 10.5 or 11 feet, but obviously coordination with DOT is needed to narrow the travel lanes down. So the second segment we're going to look at is Armistead Road up to Woodgate Way. So in this area, we also evaluated the east and the west side of Thomasville Road. We did look at utilizing Armstrong, which would take us up to Winthrop Way, which still may be considered a part of this network, but we can't accommodate a 10-foot multi-use path there with just the limited right-of-way within some of those neighborhood roads, but there's possibility some signage or traffic calming could occur within that area to allow the connection to Thomasville Road. The right-of-way along Thomasville Road varies throughout, so we also evaluated this corridor by looking at retrofitting the road within this area, but we did find that it was feasible on both sides of the east and the west side of the corridor. There are some significant trees really heavily on the west side of the corridor where we would need to possibly have some innovative design or bifurcate the trail, which means to sort of split it in area to hopefully avoid a lot of those trees within that. But as we started moving forward, the preferred side of the corridor for this is Thomasville Road East from Armistead up to Woodgate Way. So within this area, the way we would achieve the additional space for the multi-use path would be looking at removing the on-street bicycle lanes in this area. The bike lanes currently begin just about at Waverly Road along Thomasville Road, and then they continue north, so there's nothing south of there in terms of on-street bicycle facilities. So those would be removed on both sides of the corridor to allow for a little over additional 4 feet of right-of-way, as well as narrowing the lanes down to about 11 feet within this area to get additional space, allow for a buffer, as well as a 10-foot path within this project area. The third part of the project is Woodgate up to Metropolitan Boulevard. So once again, we looked at the east and the west side of the corridor. Right-of-way was evaluated, also again with the removal of the bike lanes and narrowing the road down to 11 to 10 and a half feet. The right-of-way on the west side of the corridor is a little more constrained than on the east side, but at this area, we started to look at the consideration for the next segment of this project, and that was connecting up to the Market District. And we knew that that was going to be best achieved by the west side of the corridor, because utilizing Thomasville Road as you get to the interchange was really no safe option moving north. So we knew we really had to utilize probably Timber Lane School Road to get across up to Market District. So we knew that we most likely wanted to be on the west side of Thomasville Road within this area. So as I just mentioned, segment 2 is on the east, segment 3 is on the west. So we have to cross Thomasville Road somewhere. As I mentioned, we would look at removal of the bike lanes, or we would need to remove the bike lanes to have the additional right-of-way to accommodate a path, as well as reduction in travel lanes. But we had to look at the crossing location. So we evaluated both Woodgate and Hermitage Boulevard, just looking at some of the information that was available to us. The preferred option would be to cross at Woodgate Way, and that's really because it's a three-way intersection versus a 4-way intersection. At Hermitage Boulevard, Thomasville Road, as well as Hermitage, both have free flow right turn lanes, which isn't really as safe as not having free flow right turn lanes, which Woodgate does not have. So the crossing would be there, but there would have to be additional analysis for some of the crossings along, but both are signalized intersections and would serve as the crossings are there now. So the Market District connection, as I mentioned, there's a lot we're going to go through, so pay attention. This is a large map of the Market District and some of the alternatives that we evaluated for this section. So we're going to go segment by segment and call it out and just talk a little bit about it. This is really the segment that we're going to bring out because we don't have a preferred alternative moving forward. So segment 1 in this is Live Oak Plantation Road. Live Oak Plantation Road now has an existing sidewalk that's on the north side, which goes to about Martinhurst, which is the name of the road on the north side. We would look at the south side of Live Oak Plantation to avoid having to cross Live Oak Plantation where it intersects into Thomasville Road, because that's a pretty messy and dangerous intersection. There is available right-of-way out there, and then what we would do is we would cross over to Timber Lane School Road, which also has available right-of-way. There is an area where some type of bridge structure would be needed, so we would have to evaluate the costs and looking at that, but the right-of-way is available along Timber Lane School Road, and we would consider the east side of Timber Lane School Road moving forward for this section. So the preferred route for here would be south side of Live Oak Plantation Road and the east side of Timber Lane School Road. The second option for the Market District connection is Metropolitan Boulevard. So Metropolitan Boulevard currently has some on-street bike lanes. They begin on the northeast side of the road as you pass the entrance into the bank. There's also a sidewalk available on that side. What we would do and recommend is the removal of the bike lanes, as well as shifting the sidewalk to the south side of Metropolitan Boulevard. So for this, we would have to cross Live Oak Plantation Road where it comes into Thomasville Road, and then we would stay on the south side, follow Metropolitan Boulevard through around the edge of the parking lot, and then we would connect over to the FDOT right-of-way, which is that segment that kind of goes directly straight where the other yellow line meets in is just about that FDOT right-of-way, and that would then connect down to Timber Lane School Road. There is a bit of a grade issue as you connect down to Timber Lane School Road, so there would have to be some innovative design there to make sure that the grade and ADA compliant was all met. The third option, or segment 3 for the connection here, is just staying in the FDOT right-of-way. So this would require that we cross over Live Oak Plantation Road as well as Metropolitan Boulevard, and then we would just stay in the FDOT right-of-way until we hit where we can go across where the FDOT right-of-way goes behind. It's almost like a pond within that area. down to Timber Lane School Road. There have been a few conversations with DOT about using the right-of-way. That's not 100% approved yet, and those conversations would need to continue to happen if this option was the one that was preferred and moving forward. So the next segment is those three options all bring us to Timber Lane School Road, just about where the bridge goes over at I-10. Now we're going to stay along Timber Lane School Road, and our options are either to stay along Timber Lane School Road until it meets into Timber Lane Road, or to use an electrical easement that cuts on the west side of Gilchrist Elementary School. We have had conversations with both the school as well as Tallahassee Real Estate on using that electric easement within that area, and that would be the preferred option in this, but like we said, it's possible to use Timber Lane School Road and connect to Timber Lane Road. There is just a lot of speed and some grade issues right at that intersection of Timber Lane Road and Timber Lane School Road. And then sort of looking north in this section, you have Timber Lane School Road, which currently has a sidewalk on the south side of Timber Lane School Road. That would be widened, or it would be replaced with a path on the south side of the corridor. And then we would either go over to Market Street to connect over where the existing signal exists and then go back to Martinhurst, or look for some other way to cross over. But essentially, we want to get to Martinhurst, which then connects up north to where the Blueprint Market District placemaking project occurs, and where the city has several multimodal improvements occurring on Maclay Commerce and Maclay Boulevard up to Maclay Road, which kind of goes back to me talking about those local trails and the projects that are going on and making sure that we have connectivity between all these different projects. So the next steps for this is really the additional public engagement. So we're going to have additional neighborhood association meetings as requested. Jack gets emails all the time to attend them or have us attend them and provide presentation and answer questions. We're also going to continue the virtual engagement for this project. It's probably not going to be a virtual room like we did for the first round of engagement, but maybe an ArcGIS story map to walk people through all the information that we've collected and really all just the input that we've received so far. We also are going to have some more associated live question and answer sessions. Those will be occurring in October for this project. And then we'd like to have some in-person meetings, hoping we're going to have one at least in early November. We're looking for November 4th as the target date for an in-person meeting. Fingers crossed with COVID that's possible. And then some pop-up events as well along the corridor, just to let people know where they can get more information and provide some comments. Like I said, we're going to advertise this all much larger around the project area, just to make sure everybody who really accesses and uses Thomasville Road will be able to provide their input for this project. And then after we end that second round of public engagement, we'll finalize the feasibility report to bring to you all and present what is the preferred route for the entire project, connecting Benton Road up to Market District, essentially, for your approval. So with that, we'll take any questions.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any questions before we go to public speakers? Commissioner Barfield.
Yes, thank you. Kate, whenever you present those routes, are you going to present 3 different routes, or like you normally do?
So for segment 1, we will present the 2 feasible options. So Thomasville East, and then the Trescott drainage ditch to McCord Park to Armistead. For segments 2 and 3, utilizing the eastern side of Thomasville Road and then the western side of Thomasville Road, we're really set that those are going to be the most preferred options. And then for the connection to Market District, all those options will be presented to hear back from the public.
Okay.
Yep. But all the information will be available for people to view, why we went with the preferred for those 2 segments.
Commissioner Merritt.
I noticed on that Trescott ditch, a lot of the tree right away all said NA. What is that? There is no tree impacts, or there?
Well, the trees will be removed with the ditch project,
ditch is
and then
gonna
the
be box-
trail would just be on top of the ditch.
They're going to put box culvert on the
Yep.
ditch? Okay.
Yep.
People are already writing that right now.
Okay, we're going to go to Commissioner Minor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I can wait till after the speakers. I just want to make sure we had time for the CRTPA board members to speak after.
We'll come back for conversation after the speakers. And just for clarity on that last point, when this comes back in January, are you expecting a final recommended route or a decision to be made? Okay.
Yeah, we would come back to you all with a recommended route for each option, or a recommended option, excuse me, for each segment of the project.
Okay. So this will be the last opportunity for the public to address this board before there's an official recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay. We have about 20 public speakers. Everyone will have 3 minutes to speak and give your name and address for the record. If you haven't completed a speaker form, please do so, and we'll make sure to hear everybody. The first speaker will be Meg Bates, followed by Mary Kay Falconer.
Good afternoon. I didn't expect to be first. My name is Meg Bates. I live at 721 Kenilworth Road in Waverly Hills. Just by way of a little background, I, years ago, actually got my master's degree in urban and regional planning, so I appreciate a really good, solid planning process, and this sounds like this is well on its way for that. Also, the importance of a good feasibility study to look at all options, and the importance of community involvement. So I commend you on that process. I've also been a resident of Waverly Hills for 35 years. Spent probably the first 20-some of those on my Waverly Hills Neighborhood Association. I'm not on it now, but I also appreciate the importance of neighborhood integrity. We also have a park in our neighborhood, Waverly Pond, which we treasure. So I understand all of the issues involved in that. And I'm also a longtime bike rider who has spent a lot of time on trails throughout the area. Used to spend more time on streets, don't quite now because of safety. I've reviewed the feasibility study and think it's a good process to really begin the discussion. I support the efforts for a multi-use utility kind of path. I'm glad there seems to be awareness that the current bike lanes on Thomasville are not viable. And I think a path that can deal with a lot of people is real viable. I spent yesterday riding down St. Mark's Trail, and there's bikers, and there's recumbent bikes, and there's wheelchairs, and there's rollerbladers, and there's kids, and it was just, I mean, it was a real great example of that. But in terms of then just some input, and I will follow up and keep track of this, I agree that for the one segment up to Woodgate, that the east side of Thomasville is the better option. However, for Waverly and Piedmont residents, getting to that side of the road is a challenge because what we do is we cross right at the base of the street, no light, not a good option. If there's some consideration, there's about a 1/10 of a mile, I think, stretch from Waverly Road down to Armistead on the west side. It's sort of a sidewalk, but much of it's a mud pit now. It's pretty level, and if there was some way to allow people, walkers, runners, strollers, bikers, to just get up to Armistead in a little bit better way, I think that would be a big help. As well as I've come up from Armistead before, and that entrance, or the intersection of Armistead and Thomasville, if you're on a bike, that hill coming up, there's no forgiveness in terms of space, and so that's a little bit dicey as well. So hopefully some way to come up on that south side of Armistead there would be better than getting over. But I applaud you for the process. I thank you for the opportunity for input, and we'll certainly stay engaged. And as a Waverly resident, a biker, wife of a runner, I think it's a great project, and really look forward to it happening. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mary Kay Falconer, followed by Clifford Stokes Jr.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mary Kay Falconer, 2140 Armistead Road. I'm chair of the Citizens Multimodal Advisory Committee, the CMAC. We met last week to discuss this particular item. It was a constructive discussion, and there was public testimony offered. I'm also a member of the Benton Hills Neighborhood Association Board and have been for over 18 years. Our board approved a statement on this item. I hope all of you had access to that. I'm an active cyclist, but I also have an e-scooter, and that scooter has a seat and a basket on the back. I use it for short trips, for shopping. I often get asked about it, and I tell them it cost me $400 2 years ago. It came directly to my house with assembly required, of course. The Thomasville Road corridor, to me, is completely unsafe. It does not meet my safety standards at all. And it's unique in many ways because it is an urban multi-use path. It must address a variety of needs safely. It has some unique challenges. None of us are denying that. Based on Blueprint and other CRTPA project lists, there are more multi-use paths to come. The information compiled by CRTPA and Kimley Horn for the feasibility study was very excellent. We appreciated getting that and helpful in understanding the existing conditions. At this time, I have 3 recommendations. Number 1, we need to explore other path options from Benton Road to Ashford Club Apartments. There are currently 2 offered by CRTPA staff. There is another option under consideration. Some of us are calling it the Loop. It diverts the path out Post Road to Thomasville Road and would avoid an overlay on the existing McCord Park multi-use path. Several residents in Benton Hills are willing to work on this. We want you to know that Benton Hills is part of the solution on this project. 2, there needs to be a comprehensive analysis of trips generated by residents and businesses along Thomasville Road. The entries and exits that produce more than a low trip threshold need to be identified. The information will further guide the selection of the path route east versus west. 3, design of the path is going to be very important. The placement of an effective and attractive physical barrier between the traffic on the road and the path at appropriate places along the corridor should be considered seriously. That's the extent of my comments. I'm available to meet with any of you to answer questions and also look forward to the next phase in the public engagement. Thank you.
Good comments.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Clifford Stokes Jr., followed by Jim Brainerd.
Good afternoon. Clifford Stokes Jr., 1340 Peacefield Place. I spent 23 years working in state government, 12 in law enforcement for FDLE, doing cybercrime investigations, crimes against children, protecting the children and the citizens of the state of Florida. I currently work for Florida State University, where I'm an information security practitioner and protecting information assets of the future of our state and students, as well as faculty. I care about people. I care about folks. In a cheesy way, I'm trying to make the world a better place for my kids to grow in. When we first heard about this project, it is difficult enough already to turn into our neighborhood. In our neighborhood, the majority of the folks who live there are retirees or close to retiring. Turning in while people are riding bikes in one direction is hard enough. If you incorporate a path where people are coming from both directions, you're going to make it impossible for us dodging cars that are coming, as well as trying not to hit and kill someone. We don't want to do that. Please take that into consideration when you're thinking about this. And there are many, many streets, many homes where folks are just trying to get home. And if that doesn't mean, I have a 14-year-old daughter who reminds me constantly that she will be driving at the end of this year. She's running for freshman class president at Leon High School. Hey. I don't want to get that call that either she's been broadsided trying to get home or that she's killed someone trying to just, because these bikers and walkers, and we bike and we ride. We take our bikes to Tom Brown Park or to, we find trails and places to ride. So we believe in outdoors and just doing the exercise thing, but this is not practical for the folks who live in this area. So please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Jim Brainerd, followed by Matthew Wilson.
Good afternoon. My name is Jim Brainerd. I live at 2814 Rabbit Hill Road in Tallahassee. That's Rabbit Hill subdivision. We've been in the same location for over 30 years, the longest continuous resident there in the development. It was actually a 2-lane road when we built our house. We knew it was going to be 4-lane, so we put this nice ivy-colored covered wall well off of the right-of-way, and now we're seriously wondering what would be the effect. For example, there are some very large oak trees that if you went on that side of the road, as a lady from Waverly Hills says, well, yeah, let's put it on the other side of the road. That's fine if you're on the other side of the road. But if you put it on the other side of the road, those trees have got to come down. No way around it. I would echo what the gentleman just said. Safety should be our primary concern. Coming either out of Rabbit Hill and going north, or trying to go across and going south is bad enough when you have, it's kind of a speedway on Thomasville Road rather than a 45 mile an hour, but be that as it may, if you have bicycle traffic going in both directions, what's going to happen is if you're going north, somebody's going to come down and hit you, or if you're trying to come across to get into Rabbit Hill, you're going to end up either having to stop in the middle of the road because suddenly someone came over that hill and you'll be broadsided, or you have to hit that person. No good option. So we would suggest you try and keep it as much as possible off of Thomasville Road and look at the safety of the people there. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Matthew Wilson, followed by Ted Thomas.
Good afternoon. It's Matthew Wilson at 3101 Share Road. So my address is not actually in this area, but for the last 7 years, I managed a great bicycle shop, which is definitely right in the area, and also dealing with a lot of the people that would potentially use this trail. And what I found, certainly in the last couple of years with the pandemic, is that we've got a lot of new users, a lot of new people that are certainly recreational users, and we always have our more longer-term commuters. And I know a lot of people, when they think of cycling, they think only as recreational, but a lot of these people are trying to commute, and either as primary transportation or certainly when the weather's nice. So what I would say is that I don't have any specific prepared comments today. I'd written some stuff to Commissioner Minor and forwarded on the Jack. But on the southern section, I really like the idea. I've written, I think, all of the various iterations of the plan on various types of bikes. And of course, the northern section, my concern would just be for more new users, some of the grades, especially that electrical easement that would descend into Timberland School Road. I've ridden it. I'm not sure if it's open currently. It was something we used a lot of times to go between the hospital and Timberland's Ravine Trail to ride. But also riding on Thomasville Road as a cyclist, going between trail systems. Because a lot of us, even recreational riders, as we ride longer, one trail is fun, but we like to go on to the next one. So we'll maybe start on the north side trails, and maybe we ride some east side trails, or maybe we're going back riding from the house. So anyway, so the lower section, I think that the levee or whatever, the raised section, the drainage area, I think is a good example of a way to do it because it doesn't impact nearly as many roads or driveways. It probably could be widened out a bit. I'm not sure what the current state is. I haven't ridden in a few years, but it was always a welcome way to get at least up to McCord Park without being on Thomasville Road. Currently, there's sections on Thomasville Road that don't even have a sidewalk south of Winthrop, on the west side at least. And further up on the west side of Thomasville Road, it's really it's quite dangerous. It's an old asphalt sidewalk that right across from Oven Park it's about a 2-foot drop, so you really got to be ready for it. But in the northern section is obviously where everyone's going to be trying to go, which is the Market District. My only concern would be that people wouldn't use that path that goes down to Timberland School Road because you're adding a lot of hills both down and back up to get there. And I assume once you get across Timberland Road, I'm not sure how if you're going to go up the road or if you're going to use that kind of informal cut through on near Computer Tutors, which takes you over to the electrical easement. But that's another way we go a lot. But anyway, so no real formal remarks other than I support the project, and I assume that the people that are working on this know what the best practices are for dealing with traffic safety, both for commuters and recreational users. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker we have is Ted Thomas, followed by Pat Martin.
Mr. Chair, just so I'm clear, was that the timer?
Yeah, I think mine was 5 seconds behind his.
Oh, okay.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Ted Thomas. I live at 1469 Vucare, Tallahassee 32308. My comments are not about bicycles versus cars. They're not about bicycles versus pedestrians, but they're about necessity and safety of this project, a 10 to 12-foot bike path. From a necessity standpoint, I asked the question, and I live off of Thomasville Road, that between Benton Hills and Metropolitan, you have bike paths for the most part on both the east and the west side of Thomasville Road. You also have sidewalks for the most part on the east and the west side of Thomasville Road. When you put a 10 to 12-foot bicycle path running both north and south, and you combine it with pedestrians, many of which who live in those neighborhoods walk their dogs. Now you put a dog and bicycles and pedestrians on the same path, and you're asking for an accident. I don't know about your dog, but my dog doesn't stay in a 2-foot radius around my feet. She sniffs all around. And I suspect that that will happen too on a 10-foot bike path where bicycles are coming from both directions. So is it really necessary that we build a 10 to 12-foot bike path? One, which scares the poo out of me when you talk about crossing that 10-foot at Woodgate Way. So you change corridors, all of a sudden you have to go on the other side of the road. That is another accident waiting to happen, and that is scary. If I were a parent who had children who rode bicycles, I'd be petrified to put them on that bike path, to be honest with you. And safety. If you talk about safety and you haven't read Dr. Haney's analysis of that particular corridor, you need to take a look at it. And if you want it, I'd be happy to send it to you, because it has many instances on roadways and entrances to homes and to streets that show that you don't have the side view that you need to cross that intersection. You have absolutely, when you have bicycles running both ways, you just can't see it. You can't make a very, very capable and comprehensive turn. My suggestions to you commissioners is take that $4 million and find a project that meets the needs in our community and is safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Pat Martin, followed by Jimmy Glisson.
Pat Martin, 3119 Brockton Way, 32308. Commissioners, I ask you to stop the multi-use path 10 to 12 feet wide along Thomasville Road. As Ted just said, Dr. Haney wrote you recently that the 2.4-mile stretch of Thomasville Road, the Tallahassee Speedway, as an earlier speaker called it, would be unsafe for cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers. Two-way bicycle traffic is harrowing, but add walkers and drivers who must avoid vehicles from both directions in parallel loops. Families with small children and citizens walking dogs along with e-bikes, e-scooters, skateboarders, rollerbladers pose major safety challenges. Okay, the staff have told us there will be no rules for the use of this path, and there will be no monitoring of it. The criteria for the feasibility study are flawed. Number one, safety is defined as safety for cyclists primarily in their documents and pedestrians, but it doesn't mention drivers. Health is defined as 2 miles in distance, while pollution due to vehicle exhaust fumes and loud noise are not addressed. Yet the most flawed criterion is equity. It may shock you, as it did me, to learn that up to 35% of us along this route, just from Benton Hills Road up to Metropolitan, are in poverty, we're old, and 25% of us don't have a vehicle. To my thinking, the solution to aging, poverty, and no vehicles is not a bicycle path. The only explanation I can imagine for where this odd assessment of Thomasville Road came from is this. DOT has right-of-way on this stretch, while it lacks it for many of the other 41 projects. Keep in mind, as one speaker already said, the path will cost about $1 million per mile, not counting the cost for utility relocation. A final criterion is something called connectivity. The flaw here, there is no funding to build a path from 7th Avenue to Benton Road. I say if we cannot know in advance that these various segments will be funded and connected, do we risk building a path to nowhere? If time permitted, I would point to the incompetent way, much as I hate to say it, CERTPA staff has sought public input or failed to. But at this point, I simply implore you, spend the money you would dedicate to this project for a safer and more
That's time, Mrs.
deserving
Barton.
part of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jimmy Glisson, followed by Wayne Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jimmy Glisson. I live at 1308 Peaceville Place, been there 30 years. I'm a retired safety engineer and risk manager. In fact, I developed and implemented the City of Tallahassee's initial risk management program, which operates today. I'm not going to repeat as much that's been said, but this boils down to common sense and safety. I keep hearing that we've been notified for months about this. Our neighborhood was not notified of this, to my knowledge, till about 4 or 5 weeks ago. So I don't know where all these mail outs and things came from, but I respectfully said that that did not happen. I keep hearing comparisons to the Woodgate pathway. Drive it. That is 10 to 15 to 20 yards off the highway, which is a 2-lane highway. There are no residential areas there to my knowledge, very few cuts. That is there designed to get you down that pathway safe pretty much. I don't recall any instance down there in the 35 years I've been living here. Woodgate Way averages 4 to 5 traffic accidents a day. And if you don't believe it, come in my neighborhood and watch. The neighborhoods that are affected by this on the east side, the majority of us have no way of egress or exit or entrance to our neighborhoods other than Thomasville Road. That would be different if we had some path outside that. Please use your common sense. We believe that you will, and that you will say this is not a project that needs to be implemented. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Wayne Blanton, followed by Paul Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk to you about Tallahassee drivers and their driving habits.
Thank you.
And if you think you can change Tallahassee drivers and their driving habits, please get in touch with me, because you haven't lived here very long if you think you can change driving habits in Tallahassee. And when you try to cross Thomasville, say going into Peaceville, where I happen to live, or Preakness Point, or Tallahassee Nurseries, very heavy traffic there, and you're trying to cross that, and you see the traffic coming this way. And if there's a bike coming this way, you will see it. And then when there's a break in traffic, you know what you do? You scoot across there as fast as you can. You haul it in there because there's a blind spot where that hill comes up, and you don't want to be sitting there. Now, at Preakness, at Peaceville, at Tallahassee Nurseries, when you sit in the median, there's a blind spot over your left shoulder. I guarantee it. Any of you can go sit there and drive and see it. So if you've got a bike coming this way, and you turn in real fast, which we all do, you're going to hit them. Or you have another choice. You can stop in the middle of Thomasville Highway, and you know what the result of that will be. This is an accident waiting to happen, and you need to take a real close look at a 2-way bike path on Thomasville or on any heavily traveled road in Tallahassee as people go in and out of their residencies and in and out of businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Paul Brock, followed by Nate Prosser.
Y'all going to get a double hit. Paul Brock, I live at 2666 Noble Drive. which I happen to use Woodgate to get to my job place, which is Tallahassee Nurseries. So twice here, it's going to be just a nightmare. We have hundreds of people coming in and out of Tallahassee Nurseries on any given day, especially during spring. Our sign is going to, maybe we'll be forced to have to move our sign, I don't know, but our customers will not be able to see oncoming bikes. Tallahassee Nursery sits at the very top of the hill. We're right there at the top, at the crest of the hill. And as other people have said, I'm going to just reiterate some of this. We've got speeders. It's 45 miles an hour. To create a path here, number one, is a huge safety hazard. Number two, what about the aesthetics? What is going to happen with the aesthetics of a lot of landscaping going on all the way from Armistead up? We've already got a bike lane from Freedom Church all the way north. Why don't we improve that? I don't think it would cost $4 million to do that, or $1 million a mile, whatever it is. I'm sorry, I'm not the best speaker in the world, but that's why you don't see me on commercials. The money could be better spent elsewhere. The atmosphere of Thomasville Road itself is not conducive to walking or biking or anything. So improve the bike lanes. We've already got a sidewalk. And currently, even with the sidewalk, I don't see that many people using it because it's not a very pleasant place to walk. So, sorry again, I'm the best speaker in the world, but I think money could be spent elsewhere much better. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Nate Prosser, followed by Jonette Sawyer.
Good afternoon, committee. I'm Nate Prosser, Tallahassee Nurseries. I live at 2911 Thomasville Road, 32308, which is the nursery address. Let's see, again, I'm coming from safety, like most of the people here. I've worked at the nursery for 27 years, and I've spent a lot of time up on there on the front lawn. We had just a month ago a telephone pole that was broke right at the entrance of our nursery, 24 inches off the curb. It put us out of telephone and, cable for 2 days with our business. That's not, hopefully nobody got hurt. I don't know if the guy was drunk or whatever. I have had to leave a customer to go help a customer out of their car up at the intersection because somebody flew up the hill. I ask y'all, if you don't want to do a study of how many cars pass going in front of Tallahassee Nurseries, that Thomasville Road, basically. If you want to do a study, go sit in a lawn chair on the sidewalk, face south, and tell me that it's safe for a family with their dog and the pinwheel and the wheelchair and the runners and the bicyclists. I think we're just inviting more of a crowd that's going to be distractive to the drivers. As my partner said, there's sidewalks on the other side of the road. We have 2 sidewalks. Make one a bike sidewalk and one a pedestrian sidewalk or whatever. Split it up. The sidewalk that was up there, nothing wrong with it. It needed an edger and a square point to clean it up. Okay, we didn't need $4 million, whatever to mess with it. I'm gonna take all my time here. Let's see here. Okay, so y'all also got to see on the screen 5 of my beautiful trees that'll be taken down in front of Tallahassee Nurseries. Along with, as you go down Rabbit Hill, all of those will be taken off. Do you think we'd have some action on the TV cameras if I went and flagged off the 16 trees with pink ribbon that are going to be taken down and killed? Okay. We're solving one issue, I guess, for the bikers and the connectivity, but we're creating a bigger problem, which is safety. How many people come in and out of our place? Woodgate, these other places. I have 100 employees at our business. 50 or 60 of them are driving vehicles in and out for the company, as well as the employees, as well as the vendors, as well as the customers, which are up into the thousands. said, we get busy, a lot of traffic coming in and out. We have recreation riders, we have, serious riders. And the thing that I thought when this thing first came out was, bikers are wanting to make their time. If we're having to.
Thank you for your comments. That concludes your time. We appreciate you being with us today. The next speaker is Jonette Sawyer, followed by Beth Doolin.
Okay, can you hear me? I'm Jonette Sawyer. I live at 2012 Winthrop Way, 32308. I've lived there for 37 years in Benton Hills. I'm speaking today for a number of residents who are opposed to the McCord Park Trescott Ditch option of the Benton-Armistead segment. There are several incompatibility and safety issues that raise our concern. McCord is a very popular passive park and has a very large number of users. Those users are multi-generational. They include dog walkers, joggers, children and their parents walking or riding bikes, 80 to 90-year-olds on oxygen with their walkers, just getting a little exercise in this safe place where there are no streets or cars to worry about. And for many, it's simply a safe, quiet place to relax. We have been reassured at a recent meeting with the CRTPA, and I appreciate the entire staff for coming. We have been reassured that no changes will happen to the park infrastructure. But using the McCord-Trescott ditch option as a segment will add faster-moving cyclists, electric scooterists, rollerbladers, and skateboarders. Adding these multimodal users will have a serious impact on our park, create safety issues, and destroy its current quiet nature. And it truly is an urban oasis. The current path is winding and bordered with heavy native vegetation. Visibility issues would be exacerbated by the faster-moving users. And speaking of connectivity, I didn't realize until recently that the Midtown to Benton part was not funded, but I know part of the plan is to provide connectivity between our city parks. So I guess Lafayette is out of it now, but the next part would be Winthrop, the next would be the McCord, the one I'm talking about today, the next one Waverly, and the final one Oven. Of those 4 parks, McCord is the only one designated to have a path running through the middle of it. And the path is not wide. In some parts, it's only 7 feet wide, and at its widest part, 10, it is lined by benches along the crepe myrtle canopy, where people like to sit and socialize and relax. So we would like to see the essence of McCord Park preserved in the same manner as the other 3 parks we're looking at connectivity for. Those other 3 parks are connected by getting off the multi-use path and going to the park, not by driving through the middle of it. So what we're asking the commissioners today is we're asking 2 things. We're asking you to explore.
That is 3 minutes. Go ahead and finish your 2 points, though.
Excuse me?
You can finish the 2 points that you're asking
Okay,
for.
I'd like to bring up 2 more points. We would like to, I appreciate Mary Kay's comments earlier. We would like to explore the loop option to keep people from going through McCord. I also want to mention the entire Trescott ditch is not being covered, only 900 feet from Benton Road. So a large part of that ditch will remain open. And I guess finally, what we're asking of the commissioners is to have this aspect or this segment of the path removed. It just doesn't work. And I think it's great to have multimodal transport. It is necessary. But I think we also need to give a lot of thought about our green spaces and preserving the few we have in the middle of town. Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is Beth Doolin, followed by Larry Gonzalez.
I won't take up. This is Beth Dolan. I live at 2117 Trescott Drive. I'm here to talk about the McCord Park and hoping that that will be removed as an option. I won't go into a lot of detail because Jeanette just said it, but it is a park that is passive. There's kids running. There's people. Today I saw a lady with her bicycle with a child on her little scooter. They go to the little free library. It's a place for people to enjoy. It's a place for people to enjoy nature, to enjoy each other. Kids, my dog is running around. I don't see how you can pull. And what it is, it's actually, there are cyclists that come on there. Everybody uses that park. But what we're doing here is we're funneling. We're using a trail and we're funneling cyclists who are not there as a destination. There is a cut through. So what happens to these children when they're playing? What happens to me when I'm walking my dog, or the 87-year-old lady who's walking her dog? It's just, I know that one of your guidelines is to provide a safe connection. Bringing that into a park like that is certainly not a safe connection. I mean, not safe for the cyclist who's going to have to maneuver through them, nor the people who are trying to get out of their way. I really hope that you do consider taking that off. And if you're unsure, come to McCord Park. You may not know what it's like. It's a beautiful park. Armistead, there's a parking lot. Walk through it on a Saturday when you see so many families out there, and then envision what it would be like with bikers, cyclists who are moving from one side to another, a two-way multi-use path coming through there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Larry Gonzalez, followed by Chloe Wilcox.
Thank you very much. I'm Larry Gonzalez, president of the Thomasville Trace Homeowners Association, and for all the reasons spoken in opposition thus far, our neighborhood is in agreement, so I won't be repetitive. Obviously, we like trees, we like sidewalks. We like the fact that there's a sidewalk on both sides of Thomasville Road already, that a lot of money was spent to place there. Trees were already removed to put those sidewalks in place. We'd hate to see more trees removed. We'd hate to see walls removed. But I think everyone agrees the paramount issue here is safety. And if you use common sense, for the segment that we're most concerned about, our neighborhood is directly opposite the intersection of South Ride and Thomasville Road. And so our concern is segment one. If you consider running this multi-use path down the east side of Thomasville Road versus running it down over a ditch that's currently there, there is no question about which would be more safe. There are no cuts there. There's no traffic crossing that ditch back there, whereas there are many cuts along Thomasville Road, people coming and going. As others have mentioned, it will be an accident waiting to happen. So we urge you to carefully consider the comments that have been made about whether there is a need for this. But if a decision is made to go forward with a path, we ask that that path in the first segment run along the ditch, not along Thomasville Road. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Chloe Wilcox, followed by Marcella Polanski.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Chloe Wilcox. I live at 1309 Leawood Drive, Tallahassee, Florida, in Leawood Hills. And I'm a 7th grader at the School of Arts and Sciences on Thomasville Road. I'm speaking to you today in support of the proposed Thomasville Road multi-use trail. I'm probably the only person who will speak to you today without a driver's license, which means me and my friends rely almost entirely on our bikes to get us places. Most of us ride on Thomasville Road almost every day. We ride to school, we ride to McClay Gardens, we ride to Midtown to shop and eat. We are literally the perfect citizens. We don't put out any greenhouse gases, and we shop locally. Almost everywhere we go, we have to use either the bike lane or the sidewalk on Thomasville Road. Although we're expected to use the bike lanes, most of us are between the ages of 12 and 14 and genuinely don't feel safe putting ourselves in that situation. Imagine how much further we could ride and how many more places we could get to if we just had a safer way to get there, such as a multi-use path. My school also has many a student who get there every day by either walking or riding bikes. And what street do they have to use to do so? Thomasville Road. And yes, we could just drive, but some students don't have that option. Maybe their parents leave too early for work, or they literally don't have another way to get there. A lot of kids, including me, my little brother, and a lot of my friends' safety could be at risk when trying to get to school. Another reason this path would be helpful is because even though those of us who don't have the option to drive commute by bike, others opt not to do so because it's literally not safe. Maybe if we had something that protects pedestrians and cyclists more, every once in a while people would opt to bike here or walk there, and that would be great for our environment and Tallahassee as a whole. In conclusion, having a multi-use trail on Thomasville Road would allow kids like me, who bike most places, to have a better, safer option. And maybe more people will follow what the 12-year-olds are doing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Very good.
The next speaker is Marcella Polanski, followed by Ann Bidlingmeyer.
Hi, I'm Marcella Polanski. I live at 914 Dolores Drive, Tallahassee, Florida. Little emotional after Chloe's talk, but I am in favor of the path. I moved to Tallahassee in 2012 with the ambition of using a bicycle as my only form of transportation. I didn't have a car. My parents could not buy me a car. That was pretty much my option. I'd only ridden a beach cruiser before that with no gears. So I started learning the roads and how to get to work and how to get to class and get my groceries. And I fell in love with the city, and I'm still here today, mostly because of that new love and new identity I found with that form of transportation. So I also have been learning about urban planning with becoming a bike commuter for these past years. And statistically, multi-use paths are used by more people, more children, more elderly people, which is the target audience of this path as notified in the feasibility study. A bike lane along Thomasville Road is not safe for everyone. I have worked at the School of Arts and Sciences as well as a great bicycle shop, and am very aware of what it's like to ride on that stretch of road. I have used McCord Park to reach the mountain bike trails near Redbug, as well as just making it to work at School of Arts and Sciences. I don't understand the concern of like an influx in cyclists going through the area. If there is a new group of cyclists moving to Tallahassee, I'd love to meet them. Maybe we could hang out. But I don't understand this fear of all these new bike riders. Also, I was taught to always look for the missing voice. And I think that a lot of us here today don't know what it's like to only have one form of transportation or not have a car. I do have a car I share with my partner now. But I think we need to be thinking of the people that have to ride their bike to Trader Joe's for work or ride their bike north of I-10. Maybe they're nervous about public transportation because we're in a pandemic. So please think about those people that cannot afford a vehicle. Also, we are retrofitting a suburban environment that is vehicle-centric. So this is not ideal that every neighborhood comes out at one street. And it's a bummer that this is so difficult to do, but I am really excited about this path, and I really hope it comes to fruition and it'll greatly impact Tallahassee. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ann Bidlingmeyer, followed by Gail Nelson.
Hi, my name's Ann Bidlingmeyer, 1920 Harriet Drive, Tallahassee. I'm on the board of the Friends of the Miccosukee Greenway, and if you want to bike somewhere, that's a perfect place to bike. It is really great. Thomasville Road is not. My opposition to this project is not NIMBY because I live in the Lake Jackson Basin, but everybody uses Thomasville Road, which is the only scenic gateway from I-10 into the city. Too much green space and too many trees will be sacrificed for impervious surfaces. And I tried to find out the tree count, and one has not been done yet. So it's really hard to justify this without a tree count. I've been on 9 bike trips and 3 walking trips with Vermont Bike Tours, and I really like mixed-use paths. But not when they are superimposed over established neighborhoods. I had to ask myself, how many people working on this idea have ever ridden on a bike path? This is a nice idea, but not feasible, practical, or appropriate. There is not enough room to put this path in without losing the character of the road. We're losing trees and green space left and right. We need to find the right place for the right path. And this is neither. It's pretty clear that this project is not feasible, and it's okay to make this determination rather than go through the expense and demolition for something that won't work. An example of bike paths that do work is in Anchorage, Alaska. And what they did is they put in the bike paths when they put in the streets. So they weren't sacrificing neighborhoods or parks to add bike paths later. And this is really the approach to go. And it's too late for most of Tallahassee. But anyway, I hope you will do the right thing.
Thank you. The next speaker is Gail Nelson, followed by Yvonne Steiger.
Once upon a time, about 40 years ago, had there been a way to recall a county commissioner, my name would have been on the ballot. You see, there was a tie vote before the Board of County Commissioners for a go, no-go option to widen Thomasville Road. I got to cast the deciding vote to widen it. Public reaction was swift and it was harsh. It's the only time that I remember seeing my face or anybody else's with the right side of my face on the editorial page looking at the left side of my face on the editorial page, suggesting I was two-faced. FDOT was insisting that Thomasville Road inside I-10 be widened to 6 lanes. For 3 weeks, I immersed myself in data and experts. Both made it clear that Thomasville Road with 2 lanes was headed for gridlock. Fortunately, 2 staff members on our planning department rescued me, Noel Brown and Dave Bright, with a design for a 2-lane, not the 1 lane that FDOT was willing to explore, but a 2-lane flyover from Thomasville Road onto Capitol Circle, making it easy to take a path onto Capitol Circle and reducing the pressure on Thomasville Road. In addition, another commissioner, Lee Voss, proposed that we change the 319 designation on Thomasville Road at the flyover, and then Capitol Circle became a continuation of 319. Thomasville Road then became State Road 61. Data determined that we had to widen the road, but we were able to do it to 4 lanes and not 6. The decision I made was not popular, but as the years have shown, it was good public policy based on data. Today, y'all have a chance to make good public policy, but to violate federal and state guidelines would be bad design, and bad design makes bad public policy. There is nothing that can be done to make almost 44 cuts safe.
Thank you. The next speaker is Yvonne Steiger, followed by Chet Smith.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. My name is Yvonne Steiger. I live at 2110 Trescott Drive. In other words, my backyard is by the McCord Ditch. I live right by the Ashford Club Apartments. Quickly, to give you a little bit of background, I've been in Tallahassee since 1976. I was an avid bicycle rider then. That's 45 years of bicycle riding in this town. I was one of 3 ladies who, at that point in time, was still riding, at all. We didn't have women's cycling shorts back in those days. We didn't have helmets back in those days. I was riding all the streets. I was here when the Thomasville Road was widened. At the time, I didn't know anything between federal dollars, state dollars, local dollars, so I didn't even know how to lobby to ask for a bike lane on Thomasville Road. And so we have what we have on Thomasville Road today. So I will make a global statement, then I will make a more specific statement. My global statement is I am in favor of a multi-use path along Thomasville Road. In an ideal world, of course, I would say it absolutely has to be one on the east side and one on the west side. I, part-time, also lead bicycle tours for the largest not-for-profit bicycle tour company in America. And so I have the opportunity to go all over America and into Europe, and I see bike paths, I see roads, I see how things function. Again, cost is always a big issue. You guys are going to be grappling with cost. I understand that. That's why you're considering having the multi-use path either on the west side or on the east side. That really doesn't, some speakers have spoken to this issue. That doesn't work well. I am still in favor of a multi-use path, however, but I would strongly suggest you consider having one on the east and on the west and maybe not quite as wide. That's my global statement. My second statement is going to be more specific, and I'm going to use one word first, e-bikes. And I have an e-bike. Let me say that. I own a recumbent bicycle, I have a tandem bicycle, a mountain bicycle, a racing bicycle, a touring bicycle. I'm one of those types. But everybody in this room, if you're a bike rider right now and you do not own an e-bike, I will bet you within the next 5 to 10 years you will own an e-bike. Why? Because they're so much fun and because they make riding a bicycle so much easier. Why am I talking about e-bikes right now? It's because speed. E-bikes go fast. They go faster than normal bikes. And that brings me to my specific comment, which is about the McCord Ditch. I have a spin bike. I have a big sunroom, and I look over at the McCord Ditch every day when I'm on my spin bike. And so I know exactly how many people are using that McCord Ditch. And it's primarily walkers with little children and walkers with dogs. Occasionally, we see bicycles come through. But that part of
That's 3 minutes, if you could conclude your
okay,
comment.
I'll make it real fast. That part of the ditch will not be paved over, and it's not amenable. Sometimes paths are not amenable for cyclists and for walkers, and this is a case where it is not amenable for it. And I support Mary Kay Faulkner's position about a loop that turns out onto Post Road, and I would ask you to really strongly to consider that option. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Chet Smith, followed by Ben Watkins.
Good afternoon. I'm Chet Smith. I live at 1108 Lastway Drive in Waverly Hills, homeowner. I'm also a cyclist for the past 20-plus years. I ride weekly on Thomasville Road. I ride through McCord Park. I take my 18-month-old son on walks in McCord Park and in Waverly Hills Park, and we like to connect them and make a nice path. And I think that this pathway is needed. I think that it is needed for the generations to come, so we can connect all these different parks and use them from Waverly and have a safe pathway to go to Dorothy B. Oven, go to McCord, and into the Market District. So families can, as we said, e-bikes for the future. Take my family and go to dinner in the Market District, and not have to get in my SUV. I can get on our bicycle, and we can go there and have a nice evening and come back. I've also experienced cycling on the roads in Tallahassee, and it is treacherous at times, riding down Thomasville Road. And I understand as you come out of your driveways, there are times where a cyclist will be coming down the road, and we used to go fast at times. But with that consideration, you have to think about, yes, there might be someone coming the other way, but you also should be looking left and right as you exit your driveway on Thomasville and taking a right. So that safety measure of common courtesy driving should be happening already. So I don't want to continue the demonizing of cyclists. I think that we are community members. We have interest in this area, and we all have families that we aren't just out here trying to get the hard workout. we go on nice bike rides too with our kids, and slow and easy, and it's not all about the next race kind of thing. So anyway, I think that this trail use will benefit our community in the long run. You don't look at big cities like Chicago and Tampa, and they have all their walking trails along the bay there and the lake, and you have walkers and bike riders and dogs and elderly and kids. They seem to be doing okay, and they have thriving cities. So you don't hear about communities putting in walking paths and saying, man, that really messed up my neighborhood. They usually say, wow, that's really nice. I can go out there and walk with my family. So please consider that when you are making your decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. The final in-person speaker, and then we have a few speakers online, will be Ben Watkins.
Yeah, so this is, the good news for you guys is I'm towards the end. And this has got to be a pretty egregious set of circumstances for me to come down here and show up, because this would not be the way I would choose my afternoon. So I live on Thomasville Road as well, and I run the path every day. You know how many people I saw this morning? 2 using the path. And it's that way every day. So Thomasville Road, you know, we talk about, you hear the planners and the consultants talk about connectivity and placemaking and all of that. This is actually a pretty simple issue, and I'm not going to repeat what my friends and neighbors have said about the safety issues. They're obvious, and we already have connectivity. We have connectivity, it's called a sidewalk, and it runs from exactly where you're talking about. So what the proposal is to take the bike lanes off the street and narrow Thomasville Road. You know how many cars I saw on Thomasville Road this morning on my run? Thousands, right? It's a major thoroughfare. So you need to consider other constituents' involvement in this as well, and that's everybody who has to use Thomasville Road to get to work every day. And so not only is it going to be disrupted through the construction, you're going to narrow the lanes and make what is obviously a main artery even worse. And so most fundamentally, though, I look at this and I think about the economics. I think about, you know, all the good you could do with the money you're being asked to spend on this path. So what I see from where I sit is a process that's been taken over by staff and consultants and special interest, and the special interest being people who want to ride a bike. There are plenty of workarounds to get to wherever you want to go in Tallahassee on a bicycle. Up and down Thomasville Road makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So this, to me, Commissioner Richardson will remember this. Governor Childs gave senior management a book that we were required to read called The Death of Common Sense. And this is a great example of that if you guys proceed with this project. So that's where I come from, is there on other parts of town, there are innumerable areas that need sidewalks in the neighborhood. Can't you guys figure out something better to spend $4 million on than ripping up the curb and gutter on Thomasville Road, narrowing the lanes for traffic, and making a 10-foot bike lane? So surely to God, y'all can find out a better way to use this. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, Mr. Watkins, could you provide your name and address for the record? I'm sorry, I missed it in the beginning.
Sure, it's 1330 Preakness Point.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's on the speaker thing.
We're going to transition to our online speakers. We'll start with Neil Charnes, followed by Lori Guido.
You want to add some background? Hi, I'm Neil Charnes, 1325 Peacefield Place. I'm a resident who walks daily along that part of the corridor. And actually, I applaud the idea of having cyclists provided with a safe pathway. However, this multi-use pathway should not shift risk from cyclists to pedestrians. Unless it segregates cyclists and pedestrians, there's a significant risk of serious injury and death to seniors should cyclists collide with them. As you're aware, Tallahassee has an increasing proportion of seniors who are more likely to be walking than cycling. Now, I've conducted research for Florida DOT on older driver and pedestrian safety, including projects on motorists, cyclists, and pedestrians, and found in one that pedestrians in parking lots were more likely to be hit by a vehicle backing up than other age groups, meaning that they were unable either to see the vehicle or to take evasive action quickly enough when someone carelessly backed out of a parking space. The same risk of being unable to react quickly to careless cyclists would put seniors like me and my neighbors at risk when walking a multi-use path. Now, my understanding is that the 10 to 12 foot wide path would support both cyclists and pedestrians traveling both north and south. My concern is that there may be inadequate spacing for both user groups. During COVID, when I walk on the 4-foot sidewalk, I have to deviate onto the street or into the bicycle lane on Thomasville to provide 6 feet of distance as recommended by the CDC. I'm not sure how this could be done safely if cyclists are bearing down on me from behind with other pedestrians. I'm hoping that the planners will ensure segregated pathways, not a single multi-use path, to ensure safety of pedestrians like myself. Another hazard is the 44 streets and cuts along Thomasville Road along the planned route. At rush hour, it's already very difficult for vehicles leaving my neighborhood either to make a right turn or particularly a left onto Thomasville, given the very heavy traffic volume. If you add a stream of cyclists to the mix, that will clearly increase the risk to those cyclists, in part because, as others have said, there's poor visibility for motorists to detect oncoming cyclists and a very narrow time gaps to cross into their neighborhood streets. In summary, I like the idea of providing more protection to cyclists and encouraging bicycle use. However, the current plan appears to be inadequate, shifting risk from cyclists to pedestrians. That's an unacceptable trade-off, particularly when considering our aging population. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Lori Guido, followed by Bob Guido.
Well, I'm not really sure what's going on with our video here, but I'll go ahead. So I'm Lori Guido. I live at 1328 Peaceville Place. And I want to talk about the feasibility report and the suggested route from Armistead to Live Oak. I'm not going to talk about Benton to Armistead since that's still being decided. But let's see, from Armistead to Woodgate, it's on the east side of Thomasville Road. And then at Woodgate, it switches to the west side of Thomasville Road, out to Live Oak Plantation. And then I only want to look at those neighborhoods with a single point of ingress and egress to Thomasville Road. So those neighborhoods are Hidden Oaks, a single home, Rabbit Hill, Braymore Park, Creekness Point, Peaceville Place, then cross at Woodgate, Carriage Road, Windsor Trace, Leewood Drive, and another single home. So I'm only taking into account these 8 neighborhoods plus 2 standalone homes. And I'm not including Freedom Church, Tallahassee Nursery, the School of Arts and Science, or Piedmont Park Alliance Church. These 8 streets with no traffic lights and no alternative outlet to Thomasville Road have 169 homes. If you look at page 17 of the feasibility study regarding the Trescott Drive option, it lists disadvantages to this option. Residents in Benton Hills, in particular along Trescott Drive, do not want a path due to concerns regarding safety, difficulties entering and leaving their property, crime, and an increase in bike and pedestrian traffic in their neighborhood. And then a later bullet point says, there are 23 properties that will require driveway cuts along the path. Then the report states, while this option is feasible, the number of driveway cuts will make the installation of the path difficult and has the potential to create safety issues on Trescott Drive. Therefore, the project team has removed this option from consideration. My question to the board members is this. If a project that impacts 23 homeowners by requiring them to cross a multi-use path to enter a 25-mile-per-hour, 2-lane residential street, remove that option from consideration for safety reasons. How can it be justified to impact the safety of 169 homeowners by requiring them to cross a multi-use path to enter or leave a 45-mile-per-hour, 4-lane divided highway? This project may be feasible, but it's not practical when it jeopardizes the safety of residents, of path users, and the citizens that commute on this heavily trafficked span of Thomasville Road. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bob Guido.
Hello, my name is Bob Guido, and I live at 1328 Peacefield Place. And I have a background of working for 17 years for the Trust for Public Land, and went throughout the state of Florida helping create environmental projects in cities and counties. And the Miccosukee Greenway and the Lake Overstreet at McClay Garden State Park are just a couple examples of TPL projects here locally. Safety comes first. This is not a safe project, and that is my wife and I adamantly, that's why we're so adamantly against this project. Now, at the recent CMAQ Advisory Committee meeting on September 7th, a member commented on how dangerous it would be for the planned multi-use path to go through McCord Park because of the lack of bike etiquette and other safety issues. Well, you heard a lot about that today, about the dangers and safety issues. But in the CRTPA report on page 17, it says, like, residents feel that there will be impacts to McCord Park, mostly associated with speeding bikers, mixed with elderly residents, children, pets utilizing the path that may not be able to react fast enough to avoid conflicts. They also, of course, talk about the trees, the small trees being cut down compared to the large trees being cut down on Thomasville Road. And then my wife addressed the 23 properties that, cuts on Trescott. Well, I just like to thank the CMAQ members and those speakers today for bringing these issues up. And just think how these same issues would be magnified on Thomasville Road with a speed limit of 45 miles an hour and 4 lanes of heavy traffic. I just can't imagine the safety issues and the number of cuts along Thomasville Road for residents and path users. Incorporate these safety issues with the growing popularity of the e-bikes that have been talked about today, e-scooters, rollerblades, and road bikes. And this would be enhanced by the two steep grades within the 2.4-mile proposed path. I can guarantee you this, that you will not see families with children using these paths. Now I'd like to share a story I heard just the other day, and it's a quick story I'd like to convey. And a delivery person who was trying to enter Thomasville Road from a nearby street had been inching up to check traffic when a biker came that was blocked. He got off his bike and started banging on the side of her truck. She politely rolled down her window and smiled. My truck is a lot bigger than your bike, and I'm going to win every time.
Mr. Guido, that's 3 minutes. We appreciate your comments.
Well, I would like to finish just one last thing.
Briefly.
The CRTPA primary goal is will provide a safe facility to residents in the area to travel via bicycle or walking. This path will not accomplish that goal, but only create safety hazards. And it's kind of like my friend Mark Henson said. He said, we do not need a highway on top of another highway. Thanks again, and I appreciate the extra little time.
Thank you for your comments. And our final speaker will be Brett Ingerman.
Thank you. So my name is Brett Ingerman, and I live at 1114 Savannah Trace, which is off Thomasville Road, directly across from Tallahassee Nurseries. For me, this is not a hypothetical issue. I jog and walk frequently on the current Thomasville Road sidewalk on the east side to go south to Benton including McCord Park and Trescott, and north to Metropolitan. And I'm a cyclist. And I want to start out by saying that I'm 100% in favor of the proposed multi-use path. People are already walking, biking, jogging, and running on the east side of Thomasville Road, on the same sidewalk, in both directions, at the same time. But this isn't safe. This project takes the existing sidewalks and bike paths, combines them, enhances them, and extends them, and makes them safer and more enjoyable for everyone. Both online and in flyers distributed in my neighborhood, a number of negative comments have been presented that, quite frankly, I find a bit baffling. First, the comments about crossing driveways and roads. I think that's misleading. There are already a sidewalk and bike paths that cross those very same roads and driveways. I use that sidewalk frequently. This project doesn't create any new crossings, but has the potential to make those crossings safer. The idea that a multi-use path will create hazards for pedestrians when bicyclists share the path is also misleading. There are virtually no bicyclists who currently use the on-street bike lanes as they're simply too dangerous. So the bicyclists currently use the sidewalk, the same sidewalk that I and others walk and jog on. Every time I've encountered a bicyclist, they've been decent and accommodating, but the existing sidewalk isn't wide enough oftentimes, so someone has to go to the grassy area or into the road. That's dangerous. To me, creating a multi-use path that's wider and bidirectional will make it safer to walk and bike, not more dangerous. And if there's a concern about bicyclists speeding, which I think is a bit unfounded, the path can meander, or you can do things like they've done on the Miccosukee Greenway, which admittedly were done for drainage, but you could put humps and bumps there. I've been on bike paths that have stop signs, and you can also stripe the bike path to show which side of the road bike path you're supposed to be on. I've lived in communities in multiple states that have done that. A path from Benton to Live Oak along Thomasville Road already exists in the form of the sidewalk on the east side, but as I said, it's not just safe. It's not safe. And I would never bike on Thomasville Road. I am a cyclist. I would never let my son do it. Having a true, safe bike path will create great opportunities for people to get out there with their kids. Multi-use paths have had a great success in Tallahassee as well as other cities where I've lived. St. Mark's is a great path, as well as the new path from Cascades that runs behind FAMU and along Railroad Square. They are awesome, and I use them all the time. They're multi-use, they're bi-directional, and I've never seen any issues between walkers, joggers, and bicyclists. And it would be great to be able to bike to Market Square or to Midtown instead of having to get in my car and drive. But I would like to ask you for one additional consideration. The sidewalk on the west side of Thomasville Road from Waverly to Woodgate is pretty much an embarrassment and dangerous. A few years ago, when the sidewalk repairs were happening on the east side, pedestrians were directed to use this sidewalk on the west side. And it was horrible to watch parents with strollers try to navigate the broken and so oftentimes non-existent asphalt, dirt, meandering path that's on the west side. It's truly a hazard. I'd urge you, while you're doing this project, to create a viable sidewalk on the west side as well. Is that time?
That's time. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes the public speakers we have on this item. As we said earlier, this isn't an action item today, but we want to have opportunity for any commissioners that want to weigh in. I'll start with Commissioner Minor, followed by Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thanks to all the speakers that came today, and both here in person and virtually, really appreciate it. Before I start, let me say just for those of you that had a chance to read the agenda item, I think it's among regardless of where you stand, what position, what route you might want, whether you want the project at all. I want to say that staff did a really good job. Jackie did a great job on the agenda item itself. It's among the best agenda items I've read regarding the trail or multi-use path. So kudos on that. Couple things. As we've been talking with neighbors and people impacted or near Thomasville in the multi-use path, one thing that we've talked about is the outreach for the next phase of public engagement. And Greg, you and I talked about this by email earlier today. With the first phase, I think you all had the boundary of 300 feet from the project boundaries, right? And Blueprint, however, has a 1,000-foot boundary. So any homes, residences, businesses that are within 1,000 feet of the project boundary get notified by mail. What I'd like to do, I'd like to recommend that we actually, for this second phase of public engagement, since this project is such an important project for Thomasville Road and all the neighborhoods and businesses around it, I'd like to recommend that we do the 1,000-foot boundary for this for a couple reasons. Number one, because it's such an important project, but also number two, because I think the community is used to that 1,000-foot boundary. I think it makes a lot of sense. And Greg, I asked you that question this morning, and I didn't give you enough time to kind of calculate how many more addresses that would be, but I do think that this is something that's very necessary. Anyone that's impacted by this multi-use path, and there'll be many, I think should be notified by mail about the upcoming virtual meetings and such. The second thing I wanted to bring up was intuitively, with so many access points along Thomasville, on all the segments combined, intuitively it does seem like there could be some major safety concerns. As someone who's not a planner, if you take a look at Thomasville Road, you imagine yourself pulling out of Rose Hollow or Preakness Point and trying to get to the other side of Thomasville. Even if you're not doing that during rush hour, it's pretty hazardous. It feels like it's a dangerous thing to do. And I do it all the time. I mean, not out of those neighborhoods, but I drive on Thomasville all the time. It's a very busy road. And so with all those different access points, it would make common sense that there could be some safety concerns. And I know that the throughput, the bandwidth of these MUPs, projected along Thomasville, may not be, I mean, it's not going to be a racetrack. I mean, it won't be heavily dense, but it does make sense that there could be some safety issues. So my next question is what more can we do to take a look at seriously what safety considerations there are? I mean, what multi-use paths are similar to ours around the state that we could point to and actually have data that shows us if this is a true concern or not? Because right now, it seems, I know it's early, it's in the feasibility study, we're not designed yet, but before we decide on a route, I really feel like I need to have a better understanding of what these safety concerns are. Are the intuitive concerns that we have, that the neighbors have, and that I have, is that warranted? Or is there data to refute that? And I don't know the answer to that, but I'd like to have the answer for that before January. And that concludes my comments. I'd like to hear what other people have to say, but those are the two things I really am hoping for, that we can extend the boundary for 1,000 feet for the project. And then I really want us to think hard about what type of safety analysis can be done before January, or before we decide on a final route option, to make sure that you can put neighbors' concerns to rest and our concerns to rest. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Greg, thank you for the conversations that we've had. Also, we've had a similar conversation about making sure that everyone who is involved has been notified, because with the residents that I met with, that seemed to have been an issue, and you and I have talked about it, and we know that there's a correction that's going to be made there, and that in the neighborhoods, everyone who lives in the neighborhoods that are going to be impacted will receive some notification of these next public engagements. My question is, maybe for Kimberly Horn or whomever, is there a way to narrow down some of these options? I just saw a lot of, if we do this, then this happens, if we do this, then this happens. Is there some way to narrow it down? And one of the ways that I would ask if it could be narrowed down is the conversation that I'm hearing and I've heard prior to this meeting about McCord Park. And I went there, Greg kind of navigated me through there while I was driving, he was on the phone. McCord Park seems to be a very small, intimate park. And I'm just not sure why it's even in play. Again, I'm not a planner, but is there a way to narrow down the options, and can McCord Park be a part of being removed from this in the narrowing down of the parks? That's one thing I have, and I can pause while you think about that, or go on to my next thing, or you can get it to me later. The other thing is that I've heard some conversations today with some of the comments when someone talked about the generations to come, and I listened to our high schooler. You're in high school? Middle school. generations to come, this is who we need to be planning this for. And my question is, are we planning it for her safely so that she and her colleagues or her friends or schoolmates are able to be able to use this in the future? Because as we look at reducing our carbon footprint, we're going to begin to look at, well, we're already beginning to look at multiple ways to get to where we need to get to without cars. And so, and I don't question your professionalism and I guess it's not my area of expertise, I'm just asking, are we looking at it like that for the future? I know that we've heard from a lot of speakers today, but I just want to make sure that we're looking at it not just for right now, but for the future. Also, once upon a time, on a land far, far away, I worked in the FDOT safety office. And in that office, we collected a lot of data about traffic and accidents, where they occurred and all that kind of stuff. And I don't want to assume, but I'm going to kind of assume that you all have collected that kind of data and information for all of these entry points and all these places where we're hearing that accidents occurred. The gentleman from the nursery talked about you can just put a lawn chair out there and just kind of watch it happen. So I'm sure you collected that kind of data to see where these accidents or these things may be occurring, and you've put that in as a part of your the feasibility study. And perhaps that could be used to help narrow down some of the options for this. And one last thing, I didn't hear anybody mention golf carts. I heard of scooters and bicycles and, other things, but is this also going to be suitable for golf carts?
No, ma'am.
No golf carts. Let me scratch that off the list, yeah. Okay. And for my good friend Gail Nelson, who almost got recalled, thank you for widening Thomasville Road, because I remember when it was 2 lanes. When we were looking for a house, I told my husband, we don't want to live up there. You never get where you're going. So thank you, Gail. I know it wasn't easy and it wasn't cute. What we have to do here is not easy and not cute either, but those are some of the things that I wanted to put before you, Jack, Greg, whoever.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Merritt, followed by Commissioner Richardson.
2 things. Number 1, I'm glad I represent Wakulla County, not to take any heat, because this is a tough decision. Number 2, is there going to be a no-build option presented in January? Or is this trail is going to be built, pick a route?
I don't know. I mean, typically the no build is always there, but we just focus on what we're able to do. But yeah, if we come back in January and you all decide that you don't want to build it, then we're done. It's not a done deal, as we said repeatedly.
And I'm just asking for these guys.
Yeah, and typically, when DOT does a full-blown PD&E, there is always a no-build option, but this is a little bit different. I mean, this is a trail, not a highway. But yes, sir, that is always.
Because we remember what happened in Gaston County, where was the citizens decided they didn't want that bike trail, and it just died on the vine.
Can I ask a question? Because Commissioner Williams-Cox asked some questions, and I want to make sure that we provide her an answer.
I think we're going to go back around. That's okay.
Sure, we'll go to Commissioner.
Meyer had some, and
Okay.
We'll go to Commissioner Richardson, and then we'll allow.
Just a couple things. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I met with some folk today at McCord Park, and I think I may have given them, Jonette, I may have given you all some incorrect information. I said there was 1 representative from Gaston County. There are actually 2. That was my fault. I apologize for that. And also, the other issue, just for my clarification, the blueprint funding, is that the City of Tallahassee's portion of blueprint funding? Because this is not a blueprint project that was approved. So I wanted to, and I had told you all that it wasn't a blueprint project, but if it's blueprint funding from the City of Tallahassee portion, then I just wanted to get that clarification.
no, sir, it was identified, the Thomasville Road Trail was identified as a project in the blueprint list, and Autumn's here as well. What we have discussed is if the project moves forward, we as a CRTPA would work with DOT on the portion on Thomasville Road, since that is the state road portion.
Okay.
And Blueprint would pick up the 2 pieces north and south that are off of Thomasville Road.
Okay.
And
Jonette,
Autumn, correct?
I
Is that-
apologize for that. I gave you all some.
We have Autumn Calder, the director of Blueprint, with us, so we'll let her answer these questions.
Hi, thank you. So, right, Thomasville Road is a state road, so the CRTPA in the state of Florida would manage the segments of the trail that are on Thomasville Road proper.
Right.
Anywhere where the trail varies from Thomasville Road, which may be south of McCord Park, depending on the decisions that the CRTPA board makes. And it also includes the portion from Live Oak Plantation Road north, right, because we're getting off of Thomasville Road. Those would be done and funded by Blueprint.
Okay.
Commissioner Richardson, your question about Blueprint funding, the pot of money, Blueprint is implementing the Greenways Master Plan.
Mhm.
We also have the Build the Bike Route project. Those are both two projects that are funded through an annual allocation of about $1.5 million a year. And funding for this Thomasville Trail would come from those two pots. And we may find some leveraging opportunities from the Market District Placemaking project for those northern sections as well.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't give those folks some misinformation this morning, and if I did, I apologize for that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity to address those issues. Jonette, I hope you all have the information that you need now on those two issues. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dozier, did you have comments on this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. Good discussion, and I think one thought, I'm probably not alone with this, but we often say that people come in at the end of a project after it's been working through particularly transportation for years, and there's some frustration there. This one's unique because we have so many people engaged extremely early in the project. And I'm hearing some of the same frustration about not having some of the information. But I just wanted to acknowledge that up front, Mr. Chair, because I think it's important to let everyone know that all of this feedback, this is exactly the right time and going into the next phase of public engagement before we get to January, when we'll see all this come together. So I'm really thankful for all of those, whether you're really concerned, you've got questions, or you support the trail. I'm glad everyone communicated with us so much. For my part, I think overall, I understand people's concern about the safety, and particularly for those businesses. I appreciate the concerns from Tallahassee Nurseries and others. However, as a number of people have said, and I live near the area, not in District 3 for sure, I'll give that to our chairman, but near there, and I do see a lot of people walking and biking, and yet more often than not, I hear that it's unsafe. And that's what prevents people from using these trails. So I really would like to see any creative measures to improve the safety as we go forward. Is there a stop sign on the trail? Is there striping? Some of these options have been suggested, and they do work very well in other areas of our community. So I think we should explore those options to help some of those heavier trafficked intersections. And we need to look at the details about trees and about other types of things, and that's really what we get into in the next phase. A lot of good comments, and I want to appreciate the Benton Hills Neighborhood Association and all the others who have been engaged on McCord Park. I happen to go there often with my dogs, and it is a very slow park compared to some. We see a lot of people using multi-use trails for a lot of different reasons, but that is a slower place. And I think, you know, there's some constructive ideas about how to avoid the existing path through McCord. And I would really like for us to explore more of that as we move forward. I know there was a couple of questions about getting another alternative, post road or something like that. I understand the concerns that are in the item, but I guess I'll pause there, Mr. Executive Director. this is not a limitation on those options we may see come back in the next few months. Is that correct? Could we see more work on post or other options for that area around McCord?
Yes, ma'am, and I think as Jack did a really good job laying the issues out with Post Road, but we've heard quite a bit about that in the last couple of weeks. We're going to go back and take another look at it as well. One of the things, just for the board, when we looked at an alternative, once you get down to Post Road, you're only about, Jack, about 1,000 or so feet.
About 1,200 feet from the
1,200
intersection
feet
of Benton.
north of Benton on that point. So we looked at it, tried to look at it from a practical standpoint, is if somebody's going down the trail and they're looking down the road, they're like, well, there's where I'm going. Why am I going to veer off to the left here and go around that? But it is something we've talked about quite a bit in the last few days, and we're going to take another look at it. We can put it out there as an option as we go back through the public involvement. But again, there's some practical limitations we think on that. But again, it's an option that we think that we can put back on the table.
Okay.
And Jack, if you want to follow up.
Thank you. And I think you did, as you said, Greg, do a good job in the item explaining some of those challenges. I'm sorry, did I speak over Jack there?
No, I was just saying that we'll wait to answer some of these questions after the comments are completed.
Okay. Well, add to your list then, there were some questions about the existing sidewalk on the west side. And I know you had suggested removing the bike lanes from both sides of the roads and narrowing those lanes to create more space for the multi-use. But we are not eliminating the bike or the sidewalk on the west side of the road should this multi-use path go in on the east side, at least for that first segment. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. There have been some comments, and I think it was made today, about improving the connection to Waverly up to where the multi-use trail would be. But no, we would not take out any existing sidewalks anywhere along the corridor.
Okay. I think that existing 4-foot really will provide hopefully safer access, safe from Waverly to Armstead or some other points of connection here. But we also have to recognize that it isn't workable right now. So there are sections that I agree with a few of the speakers. They have a lot of problems. And I'm concerned about ADA and other issues just on that existing section. So if we could get some more information back when the options for the multi-use come back, I would appreciate that. Lastly, Mr. Chair, there's so many issues here that, I think we all could talk about for a while, but I'm looking forward to hearing, in January, kind of the results of the next section. I just, as some of you already have done, I want to congratulate Ms. Wilcox for showing up. It's not easy for any young people to come into the meeting, and yet it's so important for us to hear from those folks. She is not the only young person from SAS that I have heard of who does bike on the existing sidewalks and would use these trails more often. And that is an incredible opportunity for us to enhance the safety for those people who are already using the sidewalks and the bike lanes. So I will leave it there. I hope there's a way that we can work with everyone. And I, again, appreciate the feedback. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll go ahead and weigh in. I don't see any other speakers in the queue. I agree with Commissioner Minor on the need for an expanded notification. Since this bike trail, if it comes to fruition, would really serve every neighborhood along that corridor, I would recommend we notify those neighborhoods by mail in their entirety. If their neighborhood touches Thomasville Road, Waverly, Benton, everybody who lives in that neighborhood, because it's not just the people within 1,000 feet that would be impacted. I'm not sure the number of residents there, but anyway, we could expand that. I would think would be useful. The second point is I have grave concerns about pedestrian and a path along Thomasville Road for a few reasons. One, Thomasville Road is a major highway. The flow of traffic, 45, 50, 60 miles per hour. My son went to Seminole Montessori, so I know well the game you play of leapfrog, slamming on the gas to try to get across the lane into a driveway every day, morning and night. And when we look at best practices for bike lanes, it seems like, and I think this is a question to be asked from the safety perspective, Commissioner Minor's asking, even though the bike lanes, how they exist now, aren't protected per se, they are in the line of sight of vehicles. So if I'm crossing Thomasville Road quickly and I can see who's in front of me, but I can't see who's coming from behind me in that line of sight, and I experience this traffic situation daily on Gain Street because many cyclists use the sidewalks, even though it's a Shero area, they decide to use the sidewalks. And in that situation, you turn in quickly, but because traffic is going 35 miles per hour, many times you're able to stop in the middle of the roadway and let a cyclist pass and then go up on. So when we're answering the safety question, I think that's something we need to look at if that's a safety concern, because if you're trying to jet across Thomasville Road, there's no area to stop your car if a cyclist is going faster than a pedestrian would. A pedestrian has a lot more time to react, stop. They're not going the speed of a bicycle. So I do think as we explore this, that question will need to be answered. And then the second concern along Thomasville Road will just be how we need to utilize that corridor in the future. We're continuing to see growth in Bannerman. We're continuing to see growth in the Northeast, and we're looking at roadways that are at capacity, and we only have a certain amount of right-of-way there now. So I'm wondering what our thoughts are on the future when we have to start exploring transit lines or autonomous vehicle lanes or all these sorts of things that would require right-of-way to really move people from essentially the suburban areas in the Northeast into town, because that's been the focus of this corridor. And I don't want to seem like I'm opposed to a bike path or a multi-use path, but I do want to make sure we're creating that transportation option for people in our community, but I also want to make sure we're doing it in a safe way that's really anticipating the future traffic. So when we see best practices that don't support this, that's concerning. When we see, I like to see examples of other communities that have 10-foot multi-use paths along major highways with traffic at these speeds, and to see how they work in those areas. And I know even along the bike paths going south, there's space between the bike path and the actual roadway for a car to pull up and not block the path when it's turning. So there's a lot of questions for me along Thomasville Road. There's a lot of concerns within neighborhoods of how they're going to impact their neighborhoods. I think we heard different options, possibly. I think any options we can that can keep pedestrians and cyclists safe off of Thomasville Road are the ones we should explore. And then I think we should, I mean, we got a long way to go before we get a recommendation in January, but just continue to engage the neighborhoods, find out how many people living intend to utilize it, what the utilization rate would be, because we got a lot of priorities all across our community that would love to see funding for projects. So those are my comments. If there's any other questions that weren't answered, we'll go back to those.
I'll go back maybe to start with Commissioner Miners on the notification part. And that's one of the things we felt when we went back and looked at the first phase, we felt we could improve upon. So we've actually already been doing the work as it relates to the notification. We've actually mapped out all of the boundaries of the subdivision throughout the entire corridor. So those folks will, you know, if you own property in those subdivisions, you'll get a mail notification with the schedule of the meetings. The 1,000 feet, we can go back and look and see how the two compare. But if that's a motion from the board that you want to use the 1,000 feet, we can do that. That's completely up to you all.
But, Mr. Chairman, I would actually, I think what the chairman has suggested, which is maybe perhaps 1,000 feet boundary, but any neighborhood, any subdivision that extends beyond that 1,000 foot, that's still part of that Thomasville MUP impact, I think is important.
Okay.
So, for example, you might have a cul-de-sac that extends beyond 1,000 feet.
Right.
We will want to notify everyone beyond the 1,000 just because that subdivision is within the 1,000 feet in part.
Okay. And then going back to the safety questions, you know, of course, you can't construct a transportation facility without having safety issues. But I'd love to be able to do that. We've actually been looking for some examples around the state of similar type trails in these type of urban environments and looking at some of their crash histories. I don't know the level of detail you'd want to get into. Typically, how this works is once we go through the feasibility study and you all approve it to move it forward, a lot of that safety analysis gets done in the design phase because you have survey data available, you know, cross slopes, things like that. So you're able to actually do an in-depth analysis on every crossing along the corridor and what treatments you may use, whether it's a stop sign on the bike lane for a major intersection or something like that. So I'd like to kind of have a little bit more discussion about what level of information you'd want to see, more like a comparison of other similar type facilities around the state or something that's much more in-depth. We can do that. I'm not sure how that would impact our timeline to finish up in January, because I'd honestly would have to go back with staff and our consultant and kind of figure out, you know, exactly how we would accommodate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Minor?
yeah, that's a tough one because it seems to me that the safety considerations, and I'm not sure exactly what level of detail we need, you know, to make the decision on the path routes. But it seems to me that we need to know that information to a level of detail that we're comfortable with before we can actually proceed to design. You know, for many of the people that are here talking about their safety concerns, I mean, you know, it's easy to visualize, right? If you've already got a road that feels hazardous to cross and get to the other direction, to have a bi-directional path going on at the same time seems intuitively to be of concern. So, you know, I don't know. I think it's important for us to figure out, and maybe this is a discussion we need to have about, you know, what type of analysis is going to give us that type of assurance, yay or nay. Are the concerns valid? Do the common sense concerns, to me, it makes sense that there would be an issue. But what data do we have that might either confirm or refute that? I think we need to know the answer to that before we proceed to design.
What we might be able to do, let's see what we can get put together by your retreat next month, and then see what we have then, and then maybe have a further discussion on the safety aspects of it. Because again, there's a balance there of how much data we have readily available to us versus what we have to go out and generate. Like I said, in the amount of time we're now talking.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner,
Sounds like a good plan.
Thank you. Commissioner Maddox?
Thank you. Real quick, Greg, talk to me a little bit about the sense of urgency behind moving with this project versus the other projects that were classified as a first tier?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite.
So you sent us a list. There were multiple projects for rank number one.
Right.
Could you talk to me about the urgency behind pushing this project through or having this project go through now versus one of those other projects?
Sure.
There's a lot of safety concerns. There's a lot of people here that want to see it happen. There's a lot of people here that quite frankly, even with the safety concerns, would entertain other options if we could come up with one. I would imagine that some of those other projects that were on the list would be a lot less, I won't call it controversial, but there'd be a lot less conversation around moving forward with them versus this one that we're talking about today. So I'm trying to see, is there a sense of urgency with moving forward with this project right now versus maybe after if we don't have a consensus or closer to a middle ground there after the citizens engagement, maybe shelving this for a little bit, looking at some more options and looking at another project that we could spend that $4 million on. So if you could talk to me about how that would work, if it could work, or is there a sense of urgency behind doing this right now?
Well, you know, there's not necessarily a sense of urgency. If you recall, when we developed the Bike Ped Master Plan, this was one of the projects that's in on the top tier. It follows along with the work that we recently completed in Midtown with the Midtown Area Transportation Study and tied us into the work that Blueprint's doing up in the Market District. Just for the record, there is no $4 million sitting there ready for construction. The only thing actually that's funded beyond what we're doing now is just the design. So we still don't have any construction funds allocated to this project.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I can't say that I'm quite ready to just throw the whole project in the trash and say no build altogether, but I'm pretty sure all of us would like to see those citizens who are opposed to the 44 cuts and the project altogether come closer to those who would like to see this thing happen. If there's a middle ground there, that's the way I like to operate, to see if there's a middle ground that we can come to with time. I like to see us go there, especially knowing that we have other projects that are ranked highly as the #1 project on that list that quite possibly could move forward without as much with people closer to the same opinion about how they feel about it moving forward. So I'm going to be looking for when the notes come back from that conversation to see if there's a way that we can create a path that everybody can maybe not agree on, but feel better about versus the two paths that we're entertaining here today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions?
Mr.
from,
Chair?
Commissioner Dozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two quick things and then a comment on Commissioner Maddox's question. I wanted to say I agree with you and the chairman about expanded, and others may have mentioned this as well, expanded notification. I think this is a unique project. Maybe we want to look at that with other projects in the future as well. And this conversation that you had about analyzing the traffic or the safety concerns, I think it will be good to look at that at our retreat in more depth. So, Greg, I think that was a good suggestion. But I think, Mary Kay, chair of our CAC committee, really emphasized this point. And I think, Greg, you others have mentioned it as well. There are a lot of the trails on this list that are in the urban area. These are not going to be unique concerns about installing multi-use trails. And I think it's significant that we did this on Magnolia Drive. We are doing it currently right now. And mostly I hear we wanted a wider trail. We did that. We underground utilities. And when is it going to be finished? Why isn't it done yet? So that is a connector road. It is heavily trafficked and it's 2 lanes with ditches on the side. So it was different conditions because there wasn't existing sidewalks, but it is no less unsafe and people speed through there all the time. So maybe we could also look at those multi-use trails that we've already installed on some roads like that, 2 or 4 lane. But I think this is an issue that we need to wrap our arms around as a goal for the community and maybe start to track some of those multi-use trails a little better if we can't find that data from outside sources. The last part, I understand, Commissioner Maddox, your question about the urgency and there may be other locations. For my part, we've already put a lot of funding into this. And if we're not going to stop it today, and I don't certainly support that right now, I think we need to go to the next phase. We are going to spend more money in the coming months on the public outreach and everything like that. Now, nothing's done until we approve the final design, and then we have to go look for those dollars. So there's many more steps in this process. I think we need to be really careful about stopping a process after we've already spent money, especially if we're not going to eliminate the project altogether. If we're just going to come back to this in a few years, we're going to end up spending the same money to redo the efforts we're going through right now. So I understand your concern. There are a lot of needs in the community, but I just wanted to add to that we need to be very careful about the money we already have in this thing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Dozier. So I think there's general agreement to bring back the safety update for the trail at the retreat, analyze some of those things, especially the Circle K's, the schools, Tallahassee nurseries, how people are getting in and out of that, I think is critical. Any alternative routes that bring it off of Thomasville Road proper that we haven't explored, I think it would be beneficial. But I do want to say, we're on a feasibility stage of this. So when we're deciding whether it's feasible, the money, the public dollars spent on public engagement, whether we decide to build or not to build, that's part of the process. We haven't started design. We haven't had to purchase any right of way. If there is a time to decide we don't want to do a project, it's after bringing it to the community and letting it be vetted and then deciding up or down. But I don't want to send any type of signal that during feasibility, there isn't a possibility to hit the brakes on this project or explore alternative proposals. Are there any other questions or comments, commissioners?
I just want to make sure we're clear. You know, you mentioned in your comments there of any alternatives off of Thomasville Road.
Right, you mentioned, I guess it was considered the loop option from
post,
people to the
okay, all
post
right,
road, like anything you're exploring. I guess you're free to explore any option still up to
Sure.
this point.
I just want to make it clear that other than those really on the south and the north, there are no alternatives off of Thomasville Road that we can, that are, there's nothing there for us to pursue on those, just what we've kind of laid out, at the
Okay.
north and the south end.
Understood.
Mr. Chair, I'm still waiting for the answer to a question that I asked.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Jack, you all have the question I asked about, can we pare down some of these options, and does McCord Park absolutely have to be a part of this, or can that be removed from any of these options?
So what we heard so far is we have more options to add to look at. And I think that as we vet those along, we'll be able to eliminate those in January as we decide which route that's going to go. I don't want to eliminate anything today because it's feasible.
Right.
And we want to make sure that we're taking all the opportunities we have to analyze those and make sure that we're providing you the best answer that we can.
Okay.
And in terms of safety, does that help you out?
Yeah, that will help.
Okay. And in terms of safety, Kate, can you
Yeah, so
discuss
you
about
just kind of asked about some of the crash data that we looked at. So we did look at the Signal 4 analytics between 2015 and 2021. We did focus primarily on bicycle and pedestrian crashes with motorists during that time, since currently there is a sidewalk on both sides of the road that can be used bidirectionally by both bicyclists and pedestrians. And during that time, there were 2 crashes involving cyclists and 1 crash involving a pedestrian between that time frame that had been a part of the data that was collected. I think moving forward, we're obviously going to look at more crashes, considering more just motorist to motorist crashes at some of the the business intersections. There were clearly a lot of crashes, but those were primarily focused at a lot of the intersections along Thomasville Road.
Okay.
So I think now that we'll collect more data, we'll get a little bit more beyond just bicycle and pedestrian crashes along the corridor.
Just so I'm clear, and so that the public is clear, you'll also be looking at car crashes, not just cyclists and pedestrians. We're going to be looking at car crashes, because thank God they were not involved, but nevertheless, an accident may have occurred there.
Well, so what we looked at was vehicles with either bicyclists or vehicles with pedestrians. And now we will also look at vehicles with vehicles along
Okay.
the corridor as well.
Okay, very good. And thank you for that. I'm not asking you to eliminate anything today. I'm asking you, as you look at it, let's look at it with a way to try to avoid McCord Park. It's such a small, intimate park. I just don't understand why we need to go in and interrupt that, as opposed to finding another way, another route, is what I'm saying. I know we're not eliminating anything today, but when we come back in January, let's look at something that does not include on that park.
We've got that.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's all, Commissioner. Okay. Seeing no further comments on this item, we'll be bringing back the safety item to the retreat, and there'll be increased public notification moving forward. Moving on to 6D, CRTPA amended fiscal year roadway priority project list.
Thank y'all for listening to us.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you all.
Yeah, we welcome all thank yous. Thank you.
We'll just give a brief moment as people exit.
Thank you.
Let's do it. We don't want to run out of time.
Nobody likes
Got
us anymore.
45
They're all
minutes.
leaving. On to the next item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, up next is item 6D. This is a revision to the roadway priority project list update. And Commissioner Merritt has left it. This is actually what he had requested back in June, I believe it was, to go ahead and split the 2 segments of Crawford, or split the longer section of Crawfordville into 2 segments, hoping to maybe get some of those projects done quicker. So would
Mr. Chair, you said Commissioner Merritt requested this?
Mhm.
He left?
Yeah.
He had to leave, yes.
Mr. Chair, in the I'd like for him to be able to see it. Is there any kind of way we can move this to the retreat or to our next meeting so he can actually get the comment?
We typically don't do action items at the retreat.
Or at the next meeting so he can have an opportunity to comment?
The only issue with that is that's after our submittal date to DOT. But
Okay.
this is actually what Commissioner Merritt requested, so
Okay.
I mean, if you're all comfortable with it, I think we're all comfortable with it.
Mr. Chairman, I would
exactly
move
what he
staff recommendation for option 1.
Second.
We have a staff recommendation for option 1 to adopt the amended regional mobility plan, seconded by Commissioner Barfield. Any discussion?
One thing, Mr. Chair, could you just make sure that you, after post-meeting, have a conversation with Commissioner Merritt about the actions that we take? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Maddox. All those in favor of the motion on the table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. 6E, 2022 CRTPA budget.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this is our proposed fiscal year 22 budget reviewed by the executive committee a couple of weeks ago.
Move approval of the budget, Mr. Chair.
Are there any speakers?
Do we have any speakers on this item?
No, sir.
There are no speakers.
Is it the recommendation of the executive committee? Are they recommending this budget?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Second.
We have a motion to approve the budget by Commissioner Maddox, seconded by Commissioner Barfield. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. On to the Florida Department of Transportation report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The department has just a couple of items to update the board on. I'll be very brief. Just a reminder about the US 19 Multi-Use Trail public meeting coming up this Thursday, September 16th at the Monticello Opera House. This is scheduled from 5:30 to 6:30. It also has an online opportunity to attend that is located on the department's website under the northwestfloridaroads.com site. You can go there and register to participate online. The other item, actually Commissioner Richardson's concern about Orange Avenue and Wadish Way. The department did relocate the right lane, must turn right sign further to the east so as to hopefully give the travelers advance warning that they need to initiate a lane change if they wish to continue on Orange Avenue.
Good job.
With that, that concludes the department's update, but I'd be glad to answer any questions you may have.
I do have a comment.
Commissioner Barfield.
Yeah, I know that with SB 100, the Florida Department of Transportation has been struggling with maneuvering SCRAP, Scott, and SIGP. And I just want to say publicly how much I appreciate them working with us on the Waukena Highway segment. That road's been needing resurfacing. It was put into for 2 segments. We moved 1 segment back a year to combine it with the 2nd segment. Ran into problems with the lawsuit, had to stop it. Y'all put it back into the work program, and I just want to tell you thank you so much. I know you're struggling after the toll road information because during the toll road there was a lot of money put into that and beefed up this scrap and SIGP, correct? And then that was taken away, so just know y'all are struggling with that, and y'all are doing a good job with that.
We'll definitely pass that along to the district office.
Please do. Thank you. That's all I have on that.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Moving on to 8, the Executive Director's report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things. Of course, as we mentioned, we've got the retreat next month, October 19th. We are working on a location. It sounds like the agenda just got a little bit longer, so we'll...
You can have it at the Opera House. Jefferson County. I come here all the time. Look at that nod.
She said Waffle House?
She said the Opera House, not the Waffle House.
I thought you said the Waffle House. I was all in. Waffle House. I was all
I'll get
in.
y'all a show put on.
Moving on to 9, there were 4.
Just one real quick thing. We're still monitoring, the federal legislation. There was some compromise that came to that. There's still, last I heard, that I've lost track the last couple of weeks. They were working through committees and negotiations on it. So we'll just keep track on that as it goes through and keep you informed of that. And that's all I have.
On 9, there were 4 informational items. Any comments or concerns on this? All right, well, that will take us to 10 items for CRTPA board members. Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't know how to express my anger on this, but I'm angry as hell. And I'm angry because I don't know how many times I've asked for information on the crosswalks at Orange Avenue in front of Nims Middle School and Liberty Park and the intersection of Orange Avenue and Wanish Way where people are, and Wanish Way. I mean, my daughter came through the intersection the other day and she said, Daddy, I saw people getting out of coming in front of other folk in the turn lane. My neighbor who lives at that intersection reports to me, he said there are accidents all the time or near accidents. And like I said, I'm angry because I've asked about this and have not gotten any feedback. Yay, nay, we're working on it. This is when, and Brian, I'm going to have to put it on you because you're our FDOT contact.
I actually provided an update, but you had stepped away. I'll be more than happy to give you.
Okay, I apologize.
To give you
That was my fault if I had stepped away.
No, sir.
I hadn't gotten anything prior to today.
Not at all. In fact, that location, Orange Avenue, Wanish Way, the department did relocate the signage in that area. It's the sign that basically states right lane, must turn right. We relocated that roughly 200 feet to the east to give the travelers some advance notice of that. That's the initial step.
Let's hope that signage works.
The department will monitor this location. We did look at the crash history there, and there was nothing beyond what would typically be found at that top intersection. That doesn't mean we don't need to take a look at this, and so we've committed to continuing to monitor that. And if we need additional improvements at that location, we will. Now, as to your concerns on Orange Avenue at the crosswalk, Greg has been working very closely with our district safety office on what we can do. They've actually set aside some of the urban transportation funds the CRTPA receives. It's just a matter of getting it lined up in our work program. Unfortunately, we don't have the capacity to pursue every project, but we will do what we can to expedite this.
Okay.
Be glad to let Greg clarify anything.
Well, these two are important because you've got pedestrians crossing a very dangerous street. Middle school students, in the instance of NIMS, and I've had the principal tell me I have to send staff out there to make sure that the kids go down to the traffic light where the crossing guard is. They're crossing midway the block, but the bus stop, the Star Metro bus stop, is also on the NIM side of the street, and so adults are having to maneuver crossing Orange Avenue at that very busy segment of road to get to the bus stop. Same thing in front of Liberty Park. The service station where they go to buy stuff and gas is across Orange Avenue from Liberty Park, as well as the bus stop. Now, we're putting people in harm's way, and I don't know that we can wait on that. I mean, what's more important? That's people's safety, and we're putting them in harm's way. Children. The children in Liberty Park are doing the same thing. They're walking across that section of Orange Avenue to get to that service station or convenience store, and people crossing the street to get to the bus stop. Now, what's more important than, I don't know what could be more important than people's lives. And so, Brian, anything you all can do to expedite that, I just hope that it doesn't come to a life being lost for us to make it a top priority.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. And Director Slay, what could we do as a board to support a crosswalk for that middle school?
Well, if you all recall, you all approved the funding for the 2 crosswalks, I think earlier this year, maybe late last year. But as we talked about last time, the crossing at Liberty Park is more problematic because of lack of sidewalks and lack of right-of-way.
Yeah.
And we'll follow back up with Mike on the crosswalks at NIMS. I know, I had mentioned this at our last meeting, they were trying to get it done by the time school started, but they weren't sure they were going to be able to. So, but we will follow back up. But I will say the Liberty Parks are going to be, that's going to be a longer-term project because there's some complications with that one.
Okay. I just want to make sure that there's some forward movement. I'm not hearing anything. I request it, and then I don't hear. This is the first time I've gotten any response. It's today from the last time I asked. So
So, the section of Orange Avenue with a roundabout, is that state or who's that? It's not city.
On Orange, you talking about at Lee Road? That's on the.
Jim Lee and
Yeah,
Orange.
that's on the county section of Orange Avenue.
Okay, so the county has done a great job of putting flashing lights there when pedestrians are in the walkway. So there's a great example of what we need on the other end.
Right.
And because that roundabout is dangerous, because I live off of that roundabout, and I just stop to let people just drive on through if they want to, because I don't want them to drive through me. But when Ricketts lets out, and kids are in that crosswalk or whatever, there's flashing lights to let you know, slow down, that, the people in the walkway. We ought to be able to duplicate that on the other end. But if we're doing it for the high schools, we ought to be able to do it for the middle schoolers and for the others up the west.
On NIMS, I would agree that would be a lot easier, though there is
Yeah.
construction involved. But again, I'm trying to separate out the two because
No, I
Liberty
understand.
Park's a bit more complicated.
I understand. I understand that there are no sidewalks even in Liberty Park.
Right.
But flashing lights will cause people to pause whether there's sidewalks there or not. It gets people's attention.
And typically, and I may be stepping out of my lane, no pun intended, but typically DOT will not put flashing warning signs when there's nothing there for folks to walk to get to that crossing, if that makes sense.
Okay.
They've got to have some physical, like a sidewalk or something like that, to direct people to that crossing. They just can't drop flashing signs anywhere and hope that people cross there. They've got to have something that at least funnels.
Right,
folks.
and I understand that, but I want to offer this. If something, and we say this every time, if something happens to someone there, then is it more important to follow the policy or to protect life?
I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah.
So DOT, policies change all the time, but we don't want there to be body bags stacked up to make a policy change.
And even if not a flashing light, something to protect lives. Because, people are crossing that busy, and any time of day, you go through that segment of Orange Avenue, it's crowded. And people are having to maneuver between cars to get across the street to that convenience store.
And perhaps the convenience store can help. Perhaps they will be interested in allowing DOT to use part of their property or whatever to put a flashing light there or something.
Thank you, Commissioners, and
you.
wholeheartedly agree
Thank
with the
you, Mr.
safety
Chairman.
issues there. Commissioner Minor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be quick. And this is one of those issues where you've got multiple entities involved, and it's kind of hard to pin down. But during the public comment for non-agenda items, Mr. Ryan and Mr. Jacobson had brought to our attention something which maybe you've all talked about before, which is the noise abatement wall along south of I-10 from Olson to Centerville Road, the two overpasses. I don't know where to go with this so much, Greg, but I wanted to try to bring this up with you and see if, would it be appropriate, for example, for this to come back as an informational agenda item where the CRTPA board might take a position and recommend. FDOT did a sound study on this and have said that it needs to be done. But I think to hear from Mr. Ryan and Mr. Jacobson, trying to expedite that sooner rather than waiting until the I-10 is widened, I think is a good idea. What can we do to kind of help this along?
Well, just to clarify, the sound study was done as part of the I-10 PD&E to widen the I-10, so it wasn't just a separate sound study that was done. We can go back and have some conversation with the department. I'm not aware of them typically just going in and building sound walls, just an isolated sound wall. I think that if you go back and look at the PD, and there was a significant amount of sound walls throughout the entire corridor. To get them to try to build it in one particular location or two is probably not going to happen, but we can at least go back and have the conversation. And that's not the answer I like to give, but I don't know that from a practical standpoint they're not going to be able to do it, but we will go back and have that conversation.
Okay, I
Mr.
appreciate
Chair,
it. Thank you.
on point.
Commissioner Williams-Cox?
Whatever we're gonna do dealing with noise and those kind of things, we gotta be very careful because that's not the only place where we have noise issues.
Exactly.
We have noise issues on North Monroe at certain times of the morning. I'm getting an email right now, noise issues off of the Parkway in an empty parking lot. So whatever we're gonna do, it's gotta be consistent and it can't be targeted just for certain areas of town. So I
Yes,
just
ma'am,
wanted to
and
warn us on that.
And that's always an issue, again, especially on a corridor like I-10. And then I believe, looking at the study, probably 80% or better of it, they're recommending sound walls. So they're not going to go back and build one or two. And then we're going to have the same issue somewhere else. Well, what's your criteria for building it there versus here? But we will have the conversation, but I just don't hold out a lot of hope that we're really going to get where those folks want to be on.
Okay, all right, thanks. I'll follow up with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Slay. And I was going to ask that question too, so please let us know what you hear back. Commissioner Dozier, did you have anything? No? Okay.
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
If there's nothing else, we stand adjourned.